Yo, yo, what's up? There should be like at least two other people on watching. That's what it says on my side. Let's see. Oh yeah, it looks like
Yeah, I forgot
they're
to connect.
saying they're
Saying I'm muted?
yeah. Yeah, Hiya Godzilla Evolved is asking if you're muted. So I
Yeah.
guess they couldn't hear you.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. Cuz I'm a silly goober. I forgot to connect my microphone. The very thing I need for this podcast. I apologize for that. Oh boy. Already off to a great start, huh? Tripping over the finish line. So
Oh well.
so welcome everybody to the season finale of Blackscreen episode 30 technically. I am your host, Blackaroony. To my right, I have Vic, also known as Kaijuna. Say hi.
What is up, guys? Happy to finally be on a black screen.
Stop sheet. So, today is a very special day. I thought we would be going out with a bang. Bang with a debate. Debate on Godzilla X Kong. Now, for a lot of you who are fans of stuff, my channel, all that type of stuff, you would be seeing this debate as a hydrogen bomb versus a coughing baby. I like that visual. However, I'll have you know that Vic, unlike the other Godzilla YouTubers out there that defend GXK, and I'm using the word defending very liberally, he is, I would argue, a lot more honorable in his argumentation because he will not retort to the traditional, oh, it's supposed to be dumb, just turn off your brain. Right? He is more honest, honorable in that sense. Now, I may not necessarily agree with what he's saying, but I respect him infinitely more than people like Up from the Depths, and a certain rodent who I'm not going to name because he's a petty bastard. Liked what he called him. I don't know, Brick the Shrew or
Hmm.
Brick the. I don't know. How about Dick the Weasel? Just come up with names in the chat for him. So to come up with names in the Richard the Possum. That's not a rodent. Possum.
I know they're marsupials.
But Mickey the King of Candor says Mickey the Mouse.
Hmm.
Mickey the I like that one. But no, his voice is not as sounds like he's high most of the talking in it. And sentence construction, syntax, not his strong suit. Videos, not his strong suit. But yeah, no. Enough about me shitting on Richard the Rodent. Is yeah, I guess Richard the Rodent might. Yeah. So enough about me shitting on this guy. I've already shat on him before. Wordy the no, it can't be a squirrel. That's too obvious. But yeah, no, enough about that. So today we are going to engage in a little debate on Godzilla X Kong the new misfire, as I like to call it. So I am on the offense. Vic is on the defense, and we are going to present our points. So I will establish one ground rule. Let's try not to talk over each other, but that's already a given. That
Mm-hmm.
we already understand like that. Um, another rule I can come. Yes, the objective. Also, that's also a presupposition that one comes with when it's. So yes, I guess we can try to avoid. And if we are,
Yeah.
then just like point out before
Mm-hmm.
fans. Well, I like this, but this. But yeah, so I will. I don't have. I didn't write anything down. I didn't write any notes. So I have an opening statement. You will have an opening statement. We will give each other 2 minutes, and we'll open up with whatever it is that we want to open up, and then the floor is free for both of us. Sound good?
All
Yes.
right. Sounds good. Yeah.
I'm cutting out a lot. Says King. That is bad. That is not good.
Mm.
God damn it. That's not good. But it might just be the noise. Uh, I don't know what to do about the noise. I might as well just remove. I don't have the time. So y'all
Yeah.
tell me.
For at least here, you sound good to me on call. I
Yeah,
don't know how I sound on the stream, but
I think you. Yeah, I checked the stream in my phone. You sound good. It might be me, but it might not be Discord. It might just be OBS, because OBS, whenever you activate noise gate, it'll do that because it'll confuse your voice for this voice for the sound of the surrounding area, which I don't know how the sound of rain falling can ever be confused with my beautiful voice. So, uh, turn off noise canceling. I did. Yeah. So I just turned it off. Y'all let me know if I sound better now, because I just turned it off. It should sound good. It should sound good. Um, y'all let me know. This is a fear that I had whenever
mm,
I began. And also tell me if Vic's audio, turn it off in OBS. That's what I did. I did turn it off in OBS. I think another thing I need to do is just up my gain. I mean it's in the max in the dial, but I'm coming out better. Okay, cool. But I'm gonna up my gain just a little bit for both you and me. Um, for you and me.
looks like they're saying you're coming through a little better now.
Okay, okay, all right. So if you want to send super chats or support me before we begin, Patreon is always a thing. I haven't been uploading in a while, but more stuff is coming there. You can check out my buy me a coffee. Uh, give me money, please. Or you can join my Discord server. Please forgive all the autists. And yeah, Patreon, buy me a coffee, Discord, and Rumble, where I am waiting for more subscribers so that I can post more music, because I do occasionally make music. Recently, I've been on an Invincible kick, making tracks for Invincible. Uh, you know, fan made tracks of Invincible, but I've also done other works as well, such as a fan made composition of the Fantastic Four, inspired by a YouTuber called Off Tense Dimpain, OFFTN. No, OFFTENSE Dimpane, DIMPANE. Check his videos out. Check his videos out. They're really good. They're really good tracks. I recreated one of his tracks of the Fantastic Four, which I think is better than what Michael Giacchino did. What Michael Giacchino sounds like he did in the Fantastic Four First Steps trailer sounds very generic. And yeah, that's all I have to say in regards to Schilling. It's just a preemptive ad. And for Vic, you can follow him as Kaijunot on YouTube and on Twitter. I actually do not know your Twitter handle.
On Twitter, I am Vic Monstrous. That's where I post all my art, movie takes, and such.
Yeah. And I think there's like one more thing you have.
It's just other alts, Twitter or Instagram,
Okay then.
but it's all through like Vic Monstrous or Vic's Monstrosities.
All right.
So,
All right. Well, check them out, and you can also check out the host of Black Screen in the description. You can send them all the love in the world. King of Candor in chat. He is my moderator and my best man. He has 1,000 subscribers currently. He ended his King of Candor podcast temporarily, much like I am ending Black Screen temporarily. And you can send him love all the way to his channel. He can be super chatted, unlike me, because nobody loves me enough to subscribe. So you should do that so that I can get super chats, please and thank you. Uh, Now without further ado, because I'm trying to find. Oh, and happy June, the month of Dune. We will be doing a Dune marathon, and by we I mean me specifically. I will watch Dune, Dune Part 2, and the David Lynch Dune movies every single day of the week. Dune. I love Dune. And also in theaters, they're re releasing a double feature of Dune and Dune Part 2, so you should definitely check those out. Dune is an amazing series, amazing book. Love it to death, love it to tears. And Paul, he's just like me for real. He's literally me. I hallucinate shit all the time. I might be schizophrenic. But yeah. So my opening statement. I am setting up the clock. 2 minutes each. And hold on. I don't need a 30-minute timer. What's wrong with me? Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. So, for me in particular, I have been known for crapping on Godzilla X Kong repeatedly because I think it's a very bad movie, and I think the criticisms levied against it are not in favor of it are not very good. In regards to Vic, I have studied extensively his criticisms, and I have many things to say about it. I have many things to ask him, and I also think that defending Godzilla X Kong is a futile attempt. I think that the movie is foundationally broken because it's built atop the ashes of what Godzilla versus Kong did, although it will not be mentioned too much at least. And one thing I will say is that a lot of the arguments that Vic presents seem to me as post hoc rationalizations of what is in the plot, as opposed to defenses of what would be, logical cause and effect. And the way I see movies is the way I see, at least monster movies, is just everything has to follow a logic of cause and effect. Like causal relationships matter greatly in storytelling because we can perceive them in real life and they are useful for assessing information. So replicating causal relationships, no matter how fantastical a story might be, is only natural and a necessity. And it's an inherent necessity for stories to follow causal structure. And even stories that appear incoherent on purpose still rely on you knowing what coherence and incoherence is and what the difference is because your brain can process them. And so I will describe Godzilla X Kong as a non sequitur plot, and it's a non sequitur story that does not do anything right, and it's a terrible movie, just a downright horrendous movie. And with that, my 2 minutes are up now. I was stalling for time because I still had a few seconds left. So it is your turn, Vic. 2 minutes, starting in
all right.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Just want to open up by saying, I guess similar to how Black Rooney has his reputation with his takes on GXK, I'm on a bit of the opposite side of the fence where I'm pretty well known as loving the film. Since day one, I've always thought of it as a good movie objectively. And I can get into why I believe that. For now, I kind of want to start off with like the subjective take on it. Basically, like I think JSK as a film just adheres to my tastes and overall uh, film works with elements that I liked, such as like ensemble characters with like clear personalities, a simple plot with a story that's fast paced, as well choreographed action and moments and character writing for the monsters, which I all love. I find a lot of the characters enjoyable. I like to see them going through the Hollow Earth to reach their own goals. The small moments with the monsters, I think, are what give the film heart. I find that I just can relate to a lot of things and the things happening and the themes being presented forward. I think that subjectively, you can have a good narrative even with technical flaws, simply because subjectively they can be outweighed by all the good that you find in it. And I just found a lot of good in it. So I get lots of genuine enjoyment out of watching this film. I think that a lot of the criticisms for the film that are in a negative light, um, I can find a few of them valid, and but in the sense that I think a lot of it can be like subjective taste, um, as opposed to a few like technical and objective flaws that can be found.
Uh,
And I think that
Sorry to
to
interrupt,
each
but
their own.
you're 10 seconds past time.
Oh, sorry about that, man.
Yeah,
No,
it's
you're
all right.
good.
All right. So with that opening statement, I think the floor is open. So I will start by asking you, Vic. You have mentioned
Hmm.
before that you have conceded to the fact that these movies have flaws. I think that's a very good faith way to approach criticism. Just acknowledge that these flaws exist. But what do you think are narrative flaws? Because I know you mentioned in your stream that there was flaws. Well, actually, not your stream specifically, but in the stream where we covered Up from the Depths, you said one time that there was a problem with the editing. Specifically with Big Eye or Big Scar, I
Hmm.
forgot his name. You said that that was an editing mistake, and I'll come back to that. But I want to ask you, Vic, at least give me at least 5 major plot holes that you think are catastrophic or very significant that negatively affect the narrative of GXK, either whether it's something that you discovered on your own or something that you concede with us, at least the members of the Black Screen Cast or the Zimcast.
All right. So one flaw that is a little both of like me conceding to something that was pointed out and me also figuring out, like realizing it like after the fact, is that Scar King's background and his, I guess, perceived lack of motivation is something that I believe is a detriment to his overall story in the film. That is one flaw. Another is, as you mentioned before, the I call it editing because I believe that if you moved around the shots, you can have a pretty good timeline of the events when it comes to um, uh, how it takes forever for Scar King to get to the Iwi village. I think if you edited around a few scenes, you can have a pretty good grasp of the timeline and how he's able to not get there so fast. So that's like an editing mistake that I think is like a technical error. Um, and then another one I would say would be,
Oh,
I think that
but before you continue, I just want to ask: do you think the editing affects the narrative directly? Is that what you're implying? Like parts of the
yes, in
editing
a
can.
few ways,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say it does, considering you have to sort of make a few um like leaps in time, I guess, or it sort of jumbles around the timeline. I think that affects the narrative. So I think, yeah, an editing error can affect the narrative, um, but I think it's only just for that one instance.
Yeah, I agree
In
with that.
terms of that,
Yeah, I
yeah,
can agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. And then the next one I would think is that at times I think, um, since they do have some changes in geography, or at least the setting of the scene, it can be a bit confusing as to whether or not it was a deliberate choice and or like an actual error. So I think that can hinder people's understanding of either the sequence of events or like the place that the characters are in. Such as I do believe they changed either a bit of the geography for the scenes where Kong goes in or comes out of the entrance to the subterranean realm. Um, like they changed like the look of the cavern. I personally believe it's just so that they had a better shot. But either way, you do have the unintended consequence of some people not understanding if it's the same opening or not. I think that is like another flaw of the film.
Hmm.
And it's yeah, that's three.
Yeah, but I was mainly
Um,
referring to like the actual plot itself, not the any technical flaws with the editing or the visuals. Just like the actual writing,
okay, okay.
like the
So then
story.
let's see. Narratively, narrative flaws. Uh, some aspects of I guess the way um certain objects work. For instance, like we discussed before, how the crystal works. I think the narrative doesn't is like one step behind of fully explaining either what it is or how exactly it works,
Oh, the
which I think
crystal
can leave
for
a
Scar
lot of
King, that one.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Scar King's crystal.
All right.
Yeah, so that can have like another unintended consequence of people not fully understanding um like what this object is and how it works in the story. But like I said, I think it's just like one step behind from fully explaining it. And then I would say another like narrative flaw could be that, let me see, narrative. Uh Another narrative flaw is I think again there are some story beats that are just one scene away from having like a full scope of either the themes or the messages behind um, like the arcs of the characters. Like I would say we're missing like we could have used like one extra scene of like Gia and Eileen's story to really hammer in the point of finding your place in the world and accepting your like your found family. Um, uh, yeah, it's like one scene away from having like a full scope of of that narrative plot points. I think that's true of some other ones that I could probably name.
Yeah, could you go
Nothing.
into detail on them, like a lot further detail as to
Yeah.
like how they
So like
negatively affect the plot and what it would lead to if those plot points were followed to their most logical conclusion.
yeah. So I would say for the instance of like the Gia storyline, I think that if they had um either something that was pointing to like Gia awakening Mothra, if they had like something beforehand that helped emphasize like Gia's feelings of either fulfillment or her isolation from her culture, and how this in some way would um, further the idea that both she's finally finding that fulfillment, and or Eileen gets the idea that she might want to stay. Like one more scene either before she awakens Mothra. It's probably like the best place to put it. Um, I would say it just dampens the overall um, story.
Like the positioning of the
But
events is what dampens the story,
yeah,
not the actual
yes,
events
I would
themselves.
say so. Yeah, a little bit of that, plus just the fact that it feels like there could have been something more. Um, but that's not to say that I see it as it's a bad story because of that. I would say it's just a story that could have been taken to a further step to make it a greater story.
Yeah.
Um,
Typically, plot holes and
because
contrivances, like you don't need one singular plot hole or contrivance to make an entire story bad. That's like a common misconception that a lot of people had, that they think, oh, just one plot hole. But it's not even just about just one plot hole or contrivance. It's a plethora of them and how much magnitude they hold in the narrative. So, do you think that that event, like the positioning of the events and how deep they go into it, do you think that might be an issue, although not necessarily of a much greater magnitude than what someone like me would say about something else?
I don't believe for that particular one, no, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be detrimental to the entire plot or story. I just think that it. Sorry about that, random telemarketer. But no, I don't believe. I disagree that it would like damper or negatively affect the overall story
Hmm.
as something else might.
Right. So my criticism to the point of Gia and Eileen Andrews' relationship is not necessarily morality entirely, although there is a huge factor in it because characters, whatever they do or don't do or say or don't say, will entirely reflect on will entirely reflect who they are, what they believe in, and what their morals are. I've shown many examples of this as well. For example, let's say the the main, not the main character, but the character we follow, the assassin from Mad God. We see him that he's witnessing the horrors of the world. We see mutilated dolls, dolls touching themselves and after being abused, and we see,
Hmm.
just some horrible, horrible aberrations, abominations, and this assassin does not try to help. He sees lint creatures being crushed, and he does nothing to stop them. So what that tells us from visual storytelling is that this assassin character does not concern himself with whatever happens around him. He is here mainly for the mission. What that mission is,
Hmm.
it's not entirely clear, but I think that was done on purpose. Especially considering that most of the time the assassins that are sent down to the hellish landscape um, don't get to survive long enough to fulfill their duty anyway. But we can understand that from their actions, or rather lack of action, that they are indifferent to the horrors of the world. So in Gia and Eileen in particular, we know for a fact that the movie tells us that they're smart and that they're willing to do what it takes to save the world, right? So in GXK in particular, we see that Eileen is telling Italy to leave Godzilla alone because Italy doesn't want Godzilla in because Italy doesn't want Godzilla in their Colosseum, and rightfully so, right? Because it's honestly out of character for Godzilla to, stay in a city after defeating a monster. We see in 2014 that the moment that he defeats the Mutos, he rests for a bit and then he leaves. Now you could be saying, well, he's doing exactly that. Well, the thing is that makes it inconsistent is due to the power scaling, or at least the power creep in this particular instance. For example, we know that from King of the Monsters, Godzilla absorbed the radiation from the bomb that was blown up in his face, as well as the radiation that was dropped onto him by Mothra just dying on him. And we know that ever since King of the Monsters, he's been supercharged, evidenced by the fact that Godzilla uses his atomic breath a lot more often in Godzilla vs. Kong. And so, given that fact, and knowing that he's still supercharged even after the event of Godzilla vs. Kong, we know for a fact that Godzilla wouldn't really need to rest all that much. So the fact that he would need to rest at all, especially in a populated place like Rome, and a place as important as Rome, is not only out of character, it's also illogical for Eileen to dismiss the Italian government by saying, "Oh, he saved your city." Yeah, after, flattening a couple buildings and killing several people. And then he just goes out of his way to walk through the entire city. Now you could be saying, "Oh, well, he's walking through the river." Yeah, but what happens when the river ends? What happens when the river ends? There's going to be buildings there. There's going to be like houses there. There's going to be people there, right? And you could be saying, "Well, then people evacuated. People evacuated." Well, okay, that's true. People would naturally evacuate, and let's also assume that they also have Titan bunkers in that area as well. That would still not account for the fact that they would not know where Godzilla is going and where his trajectory is, because right now it seems as if Monarch cannot predict Godzilla's movements. They can only predict the fact that he is about to move and where he's going. It is significantly difficult to like have a clear established trajectory, which shows clear incompetence on Monarch's part, because they should know that he would be looking for the nearest source of radiation, not necessarily because he's tired, but because in this particular instance we are shown that he wants to charge up for something. What that something is, who the hell knows? But back to Eileen. Another point in regards to her character is that she knows ASL, American Sign Language, and she communicates ASL with Gia. Now, Gia knows sign language, and Eileen knows sign language. So by extension, Kong also knows a little bit of sign language. He understands sign language, right? So Gia begs Eileen, "Please let me go with you. You need me. They're calling me. Yada yada yada." Right? if she were a responsible mother, despite her pleas, even if Gia needed to go down there, she would at the very least go down there herself to verify that it's safe enough for Gia to go down there, right? They would verify first, because the last time Gia was down in the Hollow Earth, she almost died because of the Hellhawks and GVK, right? But she lets her tag along. And then there's Bernie, who divines knowledge that there's no way that he could possibly know, because he interprets the signals that he sees in that he's seeing. He interprets them as a distress call, when there's absolutely no way he could have known that, because he doesn't know the Iwi language and he's not familiar with how they communicate. Like for all we know, SOS could mean something completely different than what we traditionally attribute it to. For all we know, it could mean a profanity. For all we know, it could mean nothing at all, because that's how language works, right? Or that's the whole point of a language barrier. So I don't know how Bernie would be able to overcome that language barrier and come to that conclusion. But that's Bernie's fault as his character, because, well, it's consistent that he knows stuff that he has zero business knowing. Um, but how does this tie into Eileen? Well, because of this knowledge that Bernie should not have, uh, Eileen lets him come along, much to the dismay of Mikhail. Now, why is it a problem that Mikhail? Why is it a problem that he tags along, and why does Mikhail care so much? Well, Mikhail has the responsibility of keeping everyone alive. Now, it was a small crew of just Trapper and Eileen, so having an escort there to protect them only makes sense. But now he's responsible for two more people that don't need to be there, and he just tells Mikhail, "Hey, come, let them come along." And Mikhail is forced to oblige. So now he has more live. Now it's harder. His job is significantly harder to of protecting Eileen and literally everyone on board, because he doesn't protect two people anymore. He's now protecting four, and it's just one man in a world full of radioactive monsters. So she burdens him with the responsibility of their lives, and he gets punished for it by taking the most logical decision when they actually get down there. Like, he's devoured by a tree, so his death is on Eileen's hands. Now, whether that was intentional or not, that tells me that Eileen is irresponsible. That tells me that Eileen is an irresponsible person, and not a very smart one, because she should know what kind of dangers lurk in the Hollow Earth, because she was there to witness them. So that's why I don't think Eileen is a very good character.
All right. So having let's see. So I took all that in, and in some ways I can see where you're coming from. Um, with regards to Eileen and her moralities, I personally, both personally and in the scope of the film, I would say I would disagree with that. I because from everything from the examples you've given of like her bringing Gia along, as well as Bernie, with that there are still reasons given as to why they come along. Um, you did mention a little bit of the fact that Gia herself is the one being called and is receiving these visions and uh, these like panic episodes that Eileen is very concerned about. And even so, it was established that Kong will only really listen to Gia. Gia is the only one he has a connection um, with regards to like before the story, before the other apes. Gia is the only one he would listen to. And so, if they had a situation where they would need Kong, they would probably need Gia to either have them help them or directly do something. So with those two factors, I think it's justifiable that Eileen would allow Gia to come with them because she is a necessity. She's the one directly involved with the events happening, and they would need her in case Kong is required for any help or assistance. And then with Bernie, he was able to deduce the nature of the call. And from what we see on film, it is pretty easily understood what he did to deduce that. And this is
Which is
backed up
what
by
what did he do to deduce the fact that it was a distress signal?
he compared them to similar signals that they have that Monarch and I guess others have recorded in the past. He was able to see that they were all connected in some ways to either large scale events or direct tie-in events. And this is backed up by the fact, by the detail that I noticed that I mentioned that he stated that there was a signal detected that happened at the discovery of Skull Island, and it happens to line up with the fact that Marlowe in Skull Island tells tells the new people that the iwi told him they were coming. So that actually lines up pretty well with the fact that he says that there have been similar signals, and not all of them were SOSs. He compared certain patterns that he deduced were likely an SOS. Because he mentions himself that he compared them to other similar spikes in the signals, and he deduced that they were SOSs. So he has that skill set
So my
to
question is,
analyze data.
how did he interpret them as SOSs though? He doesn't speak the Iwi language.
He would, I would assume that he just compared them to others, different spikes, because they wouldn't do an they probably wouldn't do the same signal they sent to the iwi of Skull Island. Um, and so
Yeah, but
he
even
just
still,
compared them to
those
others.
signals wouldn't be in English either, or at least interpretable for the English language anyway.
Sure, but you can I well considering they can have the signals read out in this schematic reading. If you can associate certain patterns with certain events, you can probably likely deduce what the signals are meant for. Um, and so, like, if a distress signal is the three spikes, the three pyramids that we see, then, well, we see that there are other signals that Brenny shows on the paper, and they're all circled. And like as he said, he compared them to other signals. He mentions all the different events, and so I would say it's reasonable to assume Bernie can deduce that certain signals mean things, and that this particular pattern means SOS.
Well, yeah, but those other signals that he used as a way to measure the other ones, the one this one in particular, the specific signal, they would need to be interpreted as well. But he doesn't have any framework by which to do that because he doesn't know the Iwi language, because he hasn't studied the Iwi like Eileen does. What I would say is that it would make a lot more sense for Eileen to be the one to discover that, because she has studied the Iwis a lot more intimately than Bernie has. And this is a similar problem that has been carried over from GVK to this movie, because in GVK he just knows stuff that he wouldn't have any way of intuiting on his own or just interpreting, and it comes across as him just reading the script in advance and gathering the information from the future to the present, which is not good writing. So this is why I'm asking you. Like, I know that he interpreted that. I know that that is what he interpreted, and I know that he compared it. But where would he gather the linguistic framework by which to understand the other signals that he's using to compare it to this specific signal that led him to believe that this was indeed an SOS? Because three triangles, or for example, that could mean anything, right? He would have no idea of knowing. Now we know that it means an SOS signal because it's confirmed later that that is indeed what the Iwi were trying to do. But at the point in time in which those signals were given to Bernie, he would not be able to know that.
Well, I think that's correlating too much of like an actual language as opposed to like like energy signals or
Yeah, I mean, if the energy signal is
I'm not
communicating
radio
an
waves.
information, if
Uh,
the energy signal is communicating information, then it would necessarily require a language by which to transmit that information.
it's I think there's still one two of like
You're cutting up a bit.
because
Your audio is
I
sounding.
don't believe it's translated. Oh, sorry. Let's see.
Yeah, your audio. You sound. You're roboting a bit.
Hmm.
Let me check if it's me
Okay,
first.
bear with me.
Let me look at the stream first, so that I know it's not me.
Okay.
Oh, okay, it's not me. It's not me. I just checked. You were roboting in the stream. Uh, could you start your point again? Sorry about that.
Oh yeah, no problem. So I think there's still too much of a direct one-to-one of either a spoken or written language, which we know that we do have a written language. But I would say it's still inherently different from the signals being emitted from the psychic energy, because that's what it is. And
I
I,
agree, but like, how did he
so,
on top of the
mhm.
fact that he wouldn't have been able to have the framework by which to understand the information itself, which is the whole point of language. Language is the vehicle by which we transmit information to each other, kind of like how we interpret dot 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 dash 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 dot 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 as an SOS signal. Uh, I have no idea how he intuited that it was even psychic in nature. He would not have any device or framework by which to interpret whether it's even psychic or not, because it's affecting electrical um equipment. Now, we know that it is because of what is established later. But what I'm saying is that Bernie wouldn't know that it is, because he wouldn't have been involved in the Iwi with the Iwi, or studying the Iwi, to even intuit that to begin with. Now, you could assume, well, he did look at Eileen Andrews's papers. Yes, but Eileen Andrews's papers and on the knowledge of the Iwi don't necessarily focus on that. They focus almost exclusively on the relationship between the Iwis and the Kongs, specifically in Skull Island. She wouldn't even know that there are Iwis down there to begin with. So even so, her studies wouldn't have been able to help much with Bernie's case in particular. Even with Eileen going
Well,
down to the Hollow Earth and GVK, she doesn't even know that the Iwi exists there to begin with. So
well, to the point of Bernie not having a framework, to say it's psychically related, that's not true, because as you showed before, he did show Eileen her papers of the readings, but he also showed what she states as a drawing done by Gia.
well,
And
yeah, but the
so
evidence,
with
that's not
that, you can
evidence though. That's not evidence. That's like the actual thing it's happening. Not That's not like actual evidence
evidence as to what again?
as to how he would have an understanding of how it could be psychic to begin with, because he would have no framework, neither for the language itself or for an understanding that it would be psychic to begin with. Like we know that we are
I would
shown
have
this,
to
but that wouldn't
disagree
be
because
the evidence itself.
I would have to disagree because the only way for Gia to know this is that if she had seen it in her mind. And given that, like we see Gia and how she's having psychic visions, and there's physical manifestation in the forms of her drawings and her trance-like state. I think Bernie is both the type of person that has been established who would probably believe that, but there is evidence to the fact that you can have Bernie believe or recognize that this is probably a psychic phenomenon, and he can compare that and the readings he has. He could probably deduce that they don't show it, granted. Um, so I think the only way is like if Eileen made the connection that because Gio is an Iwi, she could probably give him the notes as well. But still, either way, he has readings. These readings he found thanks to his Discord chat that, well, either the library because he did go through it as well as the Discord chat. that there's other signals that they've detected that are similar in nature, and he was able to correlate each of them to specific Titan events or major events in the world. And by comparing the signals, if he can see a recognizable pattern of these three specific spikes to certain types of events, he he can likely deduce that they probably mean an SOS, since he can compare them to others that probably would not require an SOS, um, like with the Skull Island discovery, since it was since we can correlate it back to Skull Island to where it was just the Iwi from Hollow Earth letting the Iwi from Skull Island know that these newcomers were coming.
But how and why?
How and why? Let's see. How and why? Is it still how and why he was able to deduce that?
Yeah. Like I know that he compared it, but how would he first of all, how would he know to compare them to begin with? How would he know that they were comparable to begin with, and why would he not only decide to do that, but why would he come to that conclusion? Because like we already know that he did. I'm just asking like the thought process, like why would that be the conclusion itself as opposed to any other?
I think part of the process would be, I think it would be it's reasonable and logical to assume that if you're given these readings, you would probably compare them to something else. Um, so he would probably have compared them to other signals that they've recorded before.
Yeah, but
Um,
why?
considering that,
Yeah,
why?
yeah.
Well, because that's his framework. He has this mysterious signal. It's causing psychic phenomenon, and we know that Titans, they emit sound waves and other psychic waves similar to the waves we're seeing. So he would likely compare them to see if it's either something like that or something else.
Yeah.
Because it's always established that they've had regular interference as like just regular interference, but they also established that this is clearly something different than that because it's something new and it keeps um it keeps occurring.
Yeah, but the framework itself, because that's begging the question, the framework itself is the thing in question. So the film is implying that he has it, but it's not established that he would have it by anything at all. We're just left to assume it. The fact that you would need to assume is a problem. So my question would still be why? Because because saying that he has it at all would then render the argument to be circular.
All right. So it's I'm just pausing to think and gathering what you said. Let's see. That, I have to be honest. I'm not seeing. Let's see. You can correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know how you're seeing this. But I personally can't really see where the inherent flaw is in the how and why.
It's a, okay.
Um,
I'll
you,
explain it. I'll explain it. So
yeah, yeah,
the reason
yeah.
why it's a flaw is because it it is predicated on Bernie, because he doesn't have a framework, because he doesn't have enough of an understanding on the subject. He would not be able to deduce what he does. Therefore, he wouldn't be able to share his findings to Eileen. Therefore, she would be going in the Hollow Earth blind, not even knowing what to look for. That would be the main problem there. And so one thing leads to another. It's cause and effect basically. It's just basic cause and effect. Like he wouldn't be able to share that information with Eileen because he would have no information to begin with. If logic followed as it naturally would. Like it wouldn't. How? Why would it be inherently logical that he would deduce that it's an SOS?
Well, see, I believe that based on what is shown on the film, the framework is still there because
Where?
and sorry if I'm repeating myself or if I happen to cut out. Or if I just pause. That's something I do. I tend to pause when I try to formulate sentences and such.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
But so if I were to lay down the framework that I see Bernie having is one, we know that as like his basic skill set, he's an engineer. Um, because he works in like different mechanics and such. That was his job at Apex. He is also, for one, a conspiracy theorist, and also not like not one to just be like a wannabe one. He actually does like you can call it rookie level investigations, but he still does research and investigate, and he has notes and such, and he is always coming up with theories or spouting his own. And then you have the fact that these signals are being recorded by Monarch. Um, and then you have Gia is also experiencing these visions and able to physically manifest it through the drawing she's able to deduce. Eileen already gives him the impression or the idea that um, the signals that they recorded and drawings that Gia did, they're one and the same. And so,
Yeah. I would draw the connection there. Yeah, it is logical to draw the connection between uh the signals themselves and the drawings Gia made. That is, yeah, that is logical. Yeah.
yeah. And I think someone like Bernie, who, um, Eileen says, think outside the box, but also we know, he, for one, believes in all the psychic stuff, aliens and whatnot. Um, he would probably deduce that, given that Gia is also experiencing them at the same time as Monarch is recording them, that it's probably a psychic phenomenon. Um, and then it's logical to think that he would probably try to compare these specific signals that they're getting to others that they may have recorded in the past. Because if they recorded them here now, they've probably recorded other such signals that they've recorded um, for
Let me
other
ask you a
events.
question though. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Did the signals manifest the same way or appear to the same way, like three triangles or stuff like that? Did it behave the same way, like affecting electronics and appearing in a similar fashion as to how we see them in the movie in GXK?
Based on the notes that Bernie pulls up, and the specific line as is like we've seen similar readings, and they can connect them to specific Titan events. We also see that there's other readings on his notes that he circled and compared them to. So from that, um, we see that there's other signals. He's deduced that all the signals must mean different things, and depending on the Titan events that correlates to them, he was able to deduce. And I would say it's reasonable to um, deduce that this one spike, that you can see a pattern in certain Titan events, that it must mean an SOS of some kind. And furthermore, you can deduce that if Gia's seeing them, then it's probably a call to help, um, that is again psychically sent, and that they're probably calling for her help too, as well as Godzilla.
Wait. So the signals could mean different things. Like, is that in the movie? Like, is that said in the movie?
Uh, I would say it's implied, given that it's reasonable. So like it's reasonable for someone, or at least because for me, when I saw that information, I just automatically thought, well, why would there be an SOS for these other things happening? Um, but given that Bernie said that they're not the same, but they're just similar, um, you can then make the connection that they must mean different things. Um, and Bernie specifically highlights this one as an SOS.
Wait, how do you jump from they're similar to they're different? I don't follow.
Well, things can be similar, but also they're inherently different. Like
Wait,
you
but
can
if they're
have
similar and they're different, then how would he deduce it's an SOS like all across the board then?
because the readings themselves have a similar, um, like they're similar in nature. Um,
Right, right. But the other,
just
let's
yeah.
say, let's say for example, for the sake of argument, that he decided to analyze a completely different signal as opposed to the recent one that he got. How would he be able to translate what it is trying to communicate? What would be the
The only way
baseline?
that
Yeah.
well, the only way you can base that just off of the film is the correlations or how these signals are connected to the certain events. Um, he specifically mentions Ghidorah. Well, there's a bit of a mix up between like what's written on the dates, so I think that's just like a production thing. But other than that, there's he highlights Godzilla encountering Ghidorah, which um, I'm assuming has to mean when they first fought in Antarctica, or either like shortly before they meet. And then also the mentioned discovery of Skull Island. There's like so I think a viewer can automatically deduce. Well, there's no reason for the Eevee to call for help for one event or the other. So
Yeah, that's
and
what I was gonna
also
bring
if
up later. Like, how would, on
yeah
top of the fact that like if they're mostly SOS, then the thing for Skull Island wouldn't really make much sense. What would they be off sending help, asking for help for at the discovery of
yeah
and another thing too is how would they even know that Skull Island is even being discovered? Now you could say, well, maybe the Iwis of Skull Island uh, communicated this to the Iwis of the Hollow Earth. How?
yeah well the thing with that is like I'll just bring up that the Eevee are shown to be not only like a telepathic, they're also what's the word, um clairvoyant, as in they can see the future. Um,
Established by what?
established by both the Vision's GSCs as well as when Gia encounters the Iwi Queen. We see both events of the past as well as events of the future.
Yeah, but those are special cases. That's the Iwi Queen, and Gia is the chosen one by the Iwis because she can control and summon Mothra. Those are special cases. That's not a representative of the entire population. And if that is representative of the entire population, then they don't really need Gia. They can just go to the. They can just find the village and communicate with one of the leaders there to help them, summon Mothra. Because if she's not special, and everyone else has the same abilities that Gia has, then Gia isn't special. Therefore, that's all the more reason why she wouldn't need to go down there with Eileen to begin with.
I could agree that it may be a special case of certain individuals of the Eevee tribe having that clairvoyance. Um, Considering that the only ones on screen we see are of the Eevee Queen and of Gia herself. But given that Gia is able to interact in that way, it's reasonable to assume that those individuals who were special cases were also probably on the island and would be the ones to receive the message, since it's also implied that all the Yui communicate telepathically. So that's established as something that the Yui just do.
Yeah, but
I can,
again, like
yeah, I'll
it
concede the
wouldn't
fact
like,
that,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if they're all psychic, they're all telepathic. Uh, there wouldn't be a special case at all. Like it's kind of like how Syndrome says, if everyone is super, no one can be. So
yeah, for Gia, I would say this, I'll say the special case is that she has that connection with Titans. It's established in the fact that she's able to sense and predict when the Titans will show up before anyone else can.
Wait,
Um,
but you said
which
previously that
is
they're clairvoyant as well. Like the other Ewoks, you said they were clairvoyant as well.
no,
What?
I'll concede the fact that not all the Iwi are clairvoyant. Since we aren't shown that. Um,
Yeah, like how would you come to
but
that
given
conclusion though? Like, what would be the establishment for you to come to that conclusion?
well, in this conversation alone, I can, well, like I said, I can see it to you saying that they would have to be special cases. But given that the Iwi Queen and Gia are the only ones we've seen with this ability, um, it's reasonable to conclude that there may be special cases of only certain Iwi having the clairvoyance ability,
I
but
would
all the
say
Iwi
just
are
them
shown
two
to
then.
have.
Yeah, I would just say them two in particular, as opposed to just. But then, what would make them? What? How would one ascend to the point at which you're special? Like, my best guess is that if you become a queen or king of the Iwi, then it would be because of those powers, right? Um, of those clairvoyants. Now we don't really need to get into how or why they are the way they are. We can just accept the fact that they just are, right? If you are a clairvoyant, or let's say you're born with these powers, or we're born with an advanced telepathy, then you would naturally, be seen as like a chosen one. But then, but then, can there be more than one living simultaneously? Because at that point, you have to wonder if there's two of them living simultaneously, and that is how they choose their royalty. That's how they choose their emperors or god kings or whatever. Then Gia is what? The princess? A rival? A political rival? What would that necessarily mean? Like, would that mean that the Iwi queen would then be overthrown? And at that point, it's no longer a plot hole or contrivance, but rather something that the world building could tackle in other material, in supplemental material. But that's just me, brainstorming. That doesn't have anything to do with like the quality of the story at that point. But what
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what does actually have to do with the quality of the story is the fact that that all of them would be psychic or telepathic or quasi, I don't know, what you said, clairvoyant. Yeah, clairvoyant.
Yeah,
I
clairvoyant.
Yeah, if all of them are, then yeah, they don't need Gia. But if only Gia is, then why is she clairvoyant? Why is she the one that is the chosen one? What chose her? What chose her?
With regards to the clairvoyancy, I probably couldn't stay. Um, other than like you said, this is a world building thing where they would have to like establish, what happens when the power manifests in someone, and how they go about choosing their leaders. Like I can like assume, that the tribe leaders we saw in Skull Island probably have that clairvoyance ability, and they could probably uh, communicate. I would also say it would probably have to be a one-way communication because the Hollow Earth Iwi are probably the only one with access to the psychic crystal, which is also what is sending the messages themselves, as seen on screen. That the visions that Gia is seeing are connected to the crystal, that like the Iwi are infusing their powers to. Um, Either whether it be the Iwi Queen herself or like if there's like a council of psychics that do that.
Yeah, I think we're
Um,
detracting a little bit from the main point, which is that the actual signal itself could not reasonably be comprehended by really anyone but Gia. So I what I think would be more logical is if Eileen Andrews and Gia work together to figure that out, because that way Gia would be the conduit by which to bridge the gap of the language barrier between the signal sent by the Iwi and our understanding of the English language and what SOS would even mean. Because for all we know, the combination of letters SOS could mean either a profanity or a completely different word like a fish or something, or just a complete nonsense sentence to the Iwi. So she would be the one to bridge that gap, and I think the story would have been better if they just let Eileen, and it would also create an opportunity for character writing between their relationship of, in regards to the relationship between Gia and Eileen as well. It's a perfect opportunity. Like Bernie does not need to be there at all.
Let's see. I will agree to the fact that that is also a valid alternative take to it. Um, being both logically sound and the opportunity for that character moments that we can see. Um, but I don't agree that it's any much better because you keep saying specifically like, oh, the letters SOS when it's
You're
not
roboting
like
again. You're
it's not like a
roboting.
direct translation of SO. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Wait, let's see. Let me try starting over. Um, when did I start cutting out?
Uh, Near the beginnings, like from the beginning to the middle.
Oh, well, let's see. Let me try speed running this, and let's see. So I will agree to the fact that your alternate take of it um, is a good uh, alternate take of what we could have seen. Both in that it is logically sound in deducing what the reading could mean, as well as having the opportunity for the character moment. Um, I don't agree that, or I don't see it as it being um, better, um, any better in terms of Bernie deducing it, um, because he's probably the only one who would see it that way, as it being psychically related.
Why?
Um, because that's his like that's one of his defined like character traits, that he is um like the person who put puts the or that's his work, like that's his skill set. um
It's not Eileen's skill set to understand the Iwis because she has studied the Iwis a lot better than Bernie was. Like she's significantly more qualified to she's significantly more qualified to understand this than Bernie is. Bernie is a conspiracy theorist and has knowledge on engineering, while Eileen has two PhDs, understands civilizations, or at least like understands this Iwi civilization, has been in the Hollow Earth herself, and has also in is in constant presence of an Iwi, aka like the last of the Iwi. Like
mhm.
she has she has like a direct source to everything that she would know about the Iwi. She has like a direct source, like a direct connection, better than Bernie. Like Bernie and Eileen don't even know each other by the time of GVK. So I honestly I don't know how they like keep saying, "Oh yeah, we met in Hong Kong." No, they didn't. They never met in Hong Kong. So I don't know why they say that. Um, but yeah, Bernie, and honestly, I don't even know how Eileen decided to go to Bernie to begin with, because again, they don't know each other. So, um, yeah, like I don't. Eileen is significantly more qualified. You could remove Bernie from the plot completely, and it would be significantly better for it. Like he is an active detriment to the plot.
So with regards to um Eileen being more qualified, um she is qualified in the fact that she knows a lot of the Iwi lingo, and she also has Gia. So there's that, and she has no reason to immediately correlate that the signal is Iwi in origin. She only has the fact that Gia herself is the only one being affected so far, which is probably a reason why she's going through her notes and such. But she has no frame of reference at that point as to like what specifically this signal is. And she says she went to the analysts, but they don't agree that it's anything. There's no correlation there.
Yeah.
So she goes to Bernie.
She also said that to Bernie that he's the only one that thinks outside the box. but that would also then presuppose that she is willing to think outside the box, or at least seek information that is outside the box. So, what is stopping her from doing exactly what Bernie did?
Well, it's reasonable to see that some people um would probably go to others for any given reason, whether it be going to someone who is more open minded than probably yourself.
Yeah.
Since Eileen has been shown to be somewhat of a more uh, logical thinker and like a realist, I would say.
Sorry, it's just the irony of that statement. Keep going.
Of course. Um, well, yeah, but Bernie is probably the only one who would make those connections and would say it out loud. That it is psychic in nature.
Sorry, I
Um,
almost choked on my water. I'm sorry.
no problem, man. But yeah, because like, because like when Bernie, like given his presentation of it all, is a bit more, open and not ashamed, or I guess like shameless um
See, yeah, I get what you mean.
declaration.
Yeah, like I get what you mean. My question then would then become, okay, if she has some sort of like mental block, right? That some people just have mental blocks that they just can't, deduce stuff on their own. They need help. That's fine. That's okay. Why would she go to Bernie though? She doesn't know him.
Well, they met in Hong Kong,
No, they didn't. No,
and
they did not. They
yeah,
say
they
that they
did.
did. No, they say that they did, but they did not. That's a blatant lie from GXK. Like in GVK, I've seen the film countless times for my video. I know the film like the back of my hand. They did not meet. They did not meet at all. They say that they did, but they didn't. That the film is lying. GXK is lying to you when it says that they met. They didn't really meet at all.
This may come down to how you see the term meeting, but in GXK, they are right next to each other in one of the final shots. So they are in the same, they're like
No, no,
2 feet
no.
away from each other.
No, no, no. Okay. No, they do not interact. She is not aware of his existence. And remember that Bernie was working with Madison and Josh, and they are not even aware that not on top of the fact that even though she really should and would, she doesn't interact with Mark Russell, and they are on completely different areas. Um, Madison and the others are in the area where the control panel thingy majig was. Honestly, the geography of that entire scene is all really messed up. I can't tell where they are exactly, but you remember when the what's it called, the God, the heave was when where Kong was defibrillated. Which, I mean, if he succumbed to his wounds, then defibrillating would really do anything, because that's not what defibrillation does. But you remember when he was like the area where he was defibrillated was, right? Yeah, that area.
Yeah.
It was nearby the hole, near the coast. It was near the hole where Godzilla bore into, around that area, a couple miles away. Um, that is not the area where Maddie and Josh leave to, greet Mark Russell, or Bernie meets Mark Russell. They are nowhere near close to that area. They're miles apart. So no, like they did not even interact, and up until this point, Eileen is not aware of really anyone's existence of that side of the movie, for that matter. Like they do not. You would think that they would interact at the very end of the movie to, like, help solve the problem and save the day. Whatchamacallit, whatever you want to call it. You would think so. And for Eileen Andrews' case in particular, and Nathan Lind, it would make a lot of sense that they would meet with Mark Russell of all people. He is very important
Mm.
to Monarch, so you would think that they would interact, but they don't. And GXK then says that they did meet, which is, yeah, interaction. They did not
Wait,
do that.
so let me clarify this. Are you saying that it is either a error, plot hole, or contrivance that Madison's group is in the same place as Eileen's group at the end of the film because of the distance?
Okay, so just for clarification before I answer that, a plot hole is a plot contrivance, but worse because a plot contrivance you could logic bro your way into having it happen, but a plot hole by definition cannot happen. So I don't think it's a plot hole or contrivance that Eileen and Mark did not meet. I think it is a missed opportunity because of their positions in Monarch, but that's not necessarily a plot hole. It becomes a plot hole if in the next, at least for the next movie in particular, in the next movie, it is a plot hole that they say that they met because it's a direct contradiction to what was seen in Godzilla versus Kong. It's a direct
But you
contradiction.
but
Or
you do know
specifically
that there is
Bernie,
a shot.
specifically Bernie and what's her face? Eileen. Specific, not Mark. The Bernie.
But you do know that there is a shot at the end of the film where they are all in the same shot,
No,
right?
no, they're not. No, they're not. I'm gonna pull it up right now. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Give me a second, because I know for a fact that they don't. They are the shots one after the other show them present in Hong Kong, but they are not together. Per se. Uh, come on, where is it? God damn it, where is it? Oh, I'm looking in the wrong. Okay. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Yes, here we go. Uh, mm, 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 mm. Credits. Okay, so Kong is on the floor. He's on the floor. He's sitting down. Let's see. So Eileen is waking up, appearing to Nathan Lin like she's Mercy from Overwatch, looking over to Gia. Okay, help him up. They help him up. I'm gonna speed up the footage. Hold on. They speed him up. Okay, and now we transition to a completely different area. Um, and where we see Mark and Maddie. We transition to a completely different area, and then Bernie shows up, shakes his hand. And then in a completely different location. I guess it's just the lighting that makes the area similar, but they're in a completely different location. Um, it almost seems like they teleported to the, but no, they're nowhere near. Them specifically. Uh, Gia runs off to see Kong. Kong roars at Godzilla. She pushes through the crowd. Nowhere. Maddie and Mark and they're nowhere to be seen, and Bernie is nowhere to be seen in that area. Kong drops the axe. Godzilla roars at him for some reason, and then turns around, and Kong looks at him. Oh shit! Oh shit! Hold on! Hold on! Hold on! Hold on! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh, never mind then. Never mind. You were right. You were right. You were right. They do
Halloween.
appear in the same shot looking at Godzilla.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you know what? Okay, okay. I will concede. I will concede. All right. All right. You know what? I will concede. Uh they say that they met. They don't show it, but apparently they interacted off screen. So, at least it's implied that they interacted off screen. So, you know what? I'll give you that. I will
Oh
give you
yeah.
that.
Clip that, baby. Clip that.
I will give you that. But that doesn't that doesn't that doesn't then mean my argument against Bernie divide just us just knowing what he does is a good thing. It just means that okay, fine. Eileen decided to go for help with that's all it means. It means that Bernie is her help. Her like, her last resort. Um
Yeah.
that doesn't then but that everything else still stands. Everything else still stands. Just every part
Mm,
of just okay, so every part of the argument, chat, that involves the knowledge of Bernie's existence, just yeah, that's all wrong. That's all wrong. Uh, just ignore that. Just ignore that. Uh, I was wrong. But everything else, I'd say still holds weight because again,
Um,
Bernie
hmm.
wouldn't know what he does. Bernie wouldn't know what he does, and he wouldn't be able to establish a proper framework. And I don't think, Vic, I'm sorry, but I don't think you've debunked that yet. I think you so far have used a combination of post hoc words, post hoc rationalizations and circular reasoning so far.
Explain to me the post hoc.
It
Um,
means that
are-
you are basically the best way I can put it. Imagine if you're a teacher, right, and you gave a test, and there is a student that fails, because he picked all the wrong answers, but you pass the test anyway because you believe you understood the answers he meant to give. That's post hoc. So
hmm.
so basically assigning logic you're assigning logic to something that doesn't have any sort of logic whatsoever, which only proves that you are capable of thinking logically as opposed to the thing itself being inherently logical, which is my argument that the thing is not logical at all. So that's what you are. So you are assigning logic to something that inherently does not obey the laws of logic, and that is what is that's what you've been doing so
Hmm.
far. And circular reasoning, because you have repeated several times, oh, we are shown this, we are shown that, and I have asked several times why, and you haven't you've answered in a similar fashion, which is
Hmm.
unfortunately it's not a good argument. And I've also seen your stream, and your stream on Godzilla X Kong was 2 hours of mostly that. So, and it was a little. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was a little frustrating. So, give me like 5 seconds. Hold on.
All right. And let me just say, fair assessment. I'll take that.
I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I've been noticing. Just a lot of post hoc rationalizations and circular reasoning. Um, uh, Unfortunately, those are not uh, good arguments in in defense. So, but we can move on from, because I think I've already just made my point that just Eileen just sent just is irresponsible. And just
Mm.
honestly, I just think what she did to Mikhail was just downright evil. Like the man died because she burdened him with the responsibility of protecting two extra people, which did not even need to be there. So I honestly like, maybe that's just like an emotional reaction, but I personally find that to be evil, just downright evil. And I don't think it was intentional at all. I think it was just the movie accidentally creating that, accidentally, because the writers were not paying attention to what they were doing. But we can move to like something else, a different topic, because we've been
Mm.
going on for like what, 1 hour, 30 minutes. So we can move like to a different aspect overall, which is just the
Sure.
world
Sure.
building,
Yeah.
overall. Well, actually, no, not the world building. I think the world building is oh, the world building. It exists. It tries to exist anyway. I mean, if you call that existing. And uh, what other defense do you have uh in favor?
In favor. Well, let me think. Well, if you have something to prevent that you either think I haven't addressed um, or if I haven't addressed it, if you have something you want to get my perspective on, um, I'll uh,
Yeah.
I'll give my defense of
Uh,
that
Before we
if
do,
I have one.
I just wanna look at chat. Trapper murdered him, says Cyanimous. Trapper knew what the creature was and said nothing. Yeah. 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 So yeah,
Well,
I
I don't
guess
think
he let me actually pull up the scene though because I want to just make sure. Because I maybe that's just maybe I am just a little like biased, but let me just to remain objective, let's actually verify the. Hmm. I need forces. Let me speed up the footage. Hold on. I'm not showing it on screen yet. I don't want to get ass blasted by YouTube. So bear with me.
Mhm.
Okay. What's the hold up? There's something here. Okay, let me just open now. Now that I'm here, let me just open. Uh, oh man, I should really give this a. I should really give this a fade. Show transition, fade, high transition, fade. Yeah, cause just chopping just looks ugly. All right. What's the hold up? Not this way. Why? We got to make a detour. There's something here. Like here. I'm not picking anything up. Something doesn't smell right. And it's not just you. Rotting flesh. So probably just a carcass upwind. We keep moving. Hold up. Ace Ventura, Hippy Dippy, Sixth Sense. Okay, so he's being very vague. So Trapper. Okay, hold on. I'm actually gonna, cause there is something. There might be something here to it. Okay, he's looking at something. Okay, so I think. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, just to clarify to I guess see animus in chat. So I don't think it was necessarily that he. Okay, I retract what I said. I retract what I said. I don't. I think it was just my bias. I think it was just my bias. It wasn't necessarily that Trapper knew. It was that un he was being vague for no reason. He what he should have said is, I think there is something down here dangerous, like it might be a creature or something. We should keep our guard up. We don't know where it might be. Something like that. Something clear, concise, because he might not even know what it is at all. But I think just being vague got him killed. It's a common trope in movies like this and just other genre movies where people say like, guys, you better take a look at this, and they're just so extremely vague, and you're just wondering, well, what do you mean? So I think that's what I think that's what the Animus did. I don't think it was necessarily that Trapper knew what the creature was. Trapper says we're safe here. They can't reach that far away after they run away. Also actively antagonizes Mikkel in a dangerous situation. Hold on. Rotting flesh. It's probably just a carcass upwind. Well, Mikkel, hold up. Hold on. No, 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 don't go. Damn it. Dang it. What happened to I'm trying to look at it cuz I don't see it. Like I think Trapper's vagaries was what got him killed, not his knowledge. I not necessarily that the scene is any better because of it. It's not, but it's not better, but I think it's for a different problem. We should be all right. Those things don't. So that's what you meant, Animus. So that's what you. Oh, I get it. So that's what you meant. Right. Okay. Okay. These things can't. Oh. Oh no, okay, I get it. I think I get it now. I think I get it now. Yeah. So what you were saying, so he knew I'm in charge. We move. Why don't we listen to somebody calmer? I said I'm in charge. I'm in charge.
Yeah, because he knew what it was after the fact.
Yeah, but I think it was the fact that he was vague at all that got him killed, though. But the knowledge, I think the knowledge itself just puts icing on the wound already. So yeah, that's not good. It's not a good scene. But thank you, Animus, for bringing that to my attention. Because I didn't know that he did. I didn't even know that he knew. Like that didn't register in my mind when I saw the movie. So uh, actively antagonizes Mikhail. Yeah, he says that it's not just Mikhail that smells. Yeah, he did say that. Although I think it was just a jab, I guess, not an antagonism necessarily. But what I would say that it's very ill placed, which I think is it's also a testament to just the bad dialogue in this movie. This movie has a lot of bad dialogue. For example, you remember the scene where Eileen says, "Oh, well, the signal." She's talking to Director Hampton about the signal, and he says, "Oh, the signal is it could just be regular interference," and then she responds with, "Well, yeah, but it keeps happening." And I'm like, and I was just screaming at the TV like, "Woman, that's what regular means." That is what regular means. I was just
Well, I took that more
this
as
is
the
my
like the
voice. Like
regular
my
in the
voice
sense
is
that
just really sore, and my throat is really sore because when I was watching the movie before
mm,
the stream, I was just screaming at the TV whenever anything stupid happened. Like, ah, you idiot! I was just screaming. My throat hurts. I have a lot of water here.
I think the term regular is more so in the sense that it's like just the standard form of like interference, as opposed to this new thing that is continuing to happen, which would make it like not just the regular interference that typically occurs.
What if the dialogue can be misinterpreted like that, then I don't think that's still like because I don't think you should need to like logic bro your way into just assuming the logical solution. I think the story should be clear enough where you don't need to do all the work, because at that point you're just writing for the writer. Like you don't write for the writer, that's their job, right? So like I think a
But
better use of dialogue specifically for Eileen that be when director Hampton says um it's a regular interference, she would say no, it's not regular. It's not regular, it doesn't behave like any other interference we've seen before. Boom, simple, to the point. You don't need you don't need that like snarky little Tony Stark comment. You can just say, "Oh yeah, it's not regular. This isn't like any other interference we've seen before. It doesn't behave like how it normally does." It's short. You don't have to say it like that, but you can say it in a short way, simple. It gets the same idea across without you needing to make any assumptions. Because working by assumptions, post hoc, you don't want to do that. Right? He was either deliberately or leading Michael into danger,
mm,
or professionally ignorant and incompetent. A new thing in a mysterious world ends yet unexplored. Yeah, if this world is unexplored, how does he know what that is? Like, if that specific area of the Hollow Earth is unexplored, how does he know what that is? That's weird.
no, there's probably other creatures like it.
In other areas that were explored, sure, sure, I can concede to that. Yeah, I can concede to that.
Because we already have like the establishment of there are creatures out there that like with Skull Island, the flora fauna thing,
Yeah, and they said they
and
mapped like 5% of the Hollow Earth, which even if it's
yeah,
5%, that's still pretty big.
yeah.
So yeah, sure. You know what? Sure, I can concede to that. Uh,
Because originally at first I thought it was they were using the spore mantis again from Skull Island. Um,
that would have been
that's what I
nice.
thought it was gonna be.
That would have been
Yeah,
nice. A nice little callback, remembering the movies that came before. You know, using them appropriately in your story, like like the sequel that you are. You know, would be nice. Movies to do that to show a little bit of continuity, huh? Yeah, that'd be nice. Anyway, I'm being sardonic. What else? Do you have any other defense?
uh, Well, I mean, if I can further the defense of the stuff we're reading from the chat,
Uh,
I can.
I think he with what Animus says, I think sums it up well already. Like he was either deliberately leading Michael into danger, Mikhail into danger, or professionally ignorant and incompetent. A new thing in a mysterious world yet unexplored. A little bit of nuance. Given what they know about the Hollow Earth already, there is a possibility that he would know about it, but that still would then imply that he should know that in forests like that, creatures like that would reside in, and if he knows that there is a characteristic smell to them that would indicate their presence, then if he smelled that and couldn't pinpoint where it is, then running should have been option number one, and he should have told Mikhail. He should have told Mikhail to do that, and yeah. So honestly, yeah, I get where he's saying. I get why he's saying that he got them killed. He got him killed. I get it now. I think I get it now. Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah,
arrived at the same conclusion he did. It just took me longer. Look at that. Look at us, big brain folk. Uh, yeah. I'd say that's a pretty that's pretty bad characterization for Trapper. Imagine naming a guy Trapper. Imagine waiting 6 months, 9 months in someone's womb. Like, imagine like you're just a fetus in a womb, waiting 9 months to be born, tackle the world, and then your mom just names you Trapper.
well, I think that's a cool name.
What are you trapping exactly?
Well, no, it's sort of just like a. Well, let me ask. But is that just his name, or is that like a nickname he has?
I hope it's a nickname. I hope that's not like it is. It is implied that it might be his nickname. So, and because he's a vet, or at least we're told that he's a vet. Fine, vets need to trap animals that try and escape and devour other animals. So yeah, trapper makes sense. Sure, fine.
I guess so.
I guess so. Maybe if I'm just logic broing my way into just making it make sense. It's just weird. It's not a problem. I just think it's a really weird nickname to have. But there are worse nicknames to have. There are worse. There are definitely worse.
I thought it was cool because like for me it reminded me of this show I watched. I don't know if you know of Mountain Monsters, from like the Destination America, but the main guy, his name was Trapper, so
Hmm. All right, fair enough.
so it's like a thing.
There are worse nicknames to have, I suppose. Like I remember one time, I was living in DR. There was this one kid. He was an orphan, but he just kept wandering the street, being loud and rowdy, and the kids in the neighborhood just called him Bad Word. They just called him
Mm-hmm.
bad because he was always swearing, so they called him Bad Word in Spanish. In Spanish, like mala palabra. That's what they called him. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a really uncreative nickname if you ask me, but it
Wait,
also
what
kind
was the
of
Spanish word?
mala palabra, so bad word, like because he was always swearing. So
Mm.
it's a really
I guess it's a language thing, I guess,
it sounds better in
in the
Spanish. Like there's more
Spanish, yeah,
impact.
it
Yeah,
sounds better in Spanish. It's
yeah,
like chupacabra, you know?
yeah, yeah. You wouldn't call it a goat
It's
sucker. That just
goat
doesn't.
sucker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some words have more impact in Spanish. Yeah. C Animus in chat says, "I just want to harp on the whole was styled different comment from earlier. The universe completely metamorphosed to the whole to look different." Yes. Now that you bring it to my attention, thank you for bringing that into my attention. So, Vic, you once
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that the whole Hollow Earth thing, right? In GX words in GV in Brazil it's called is it pronounced palvrao? Palvrao. I don't know Portuguese. I'm sorry. Shout out to all my Brazilians. I got a couple friends from Brazil. They're great. I love them. Anyway, um, so the thing with the Hollow Earth, so in GVK, it's a void, right? You enter through this like little portal, and then you enter through what I can only assume is, I guess.
The Shadow Realm.
No, what I mean is like, okay, imagine like you're poking plastic bag through a paper. That's
Yeah.
basically how they're going through the Hollow Earth. And then Once they puncture through, they enter into a void, and then the void transforms into an LSD trip, and then from out that you exit through another hole, which is another portal, which is the entrance itself, uh, similarly to how they entered through the void. That means that there is no mantle in the because if you know your geology, your geography, you'd know that that's there would be molten
Mm-hmm.
rock around them, and they wouldn't even be able to move at all. They would be very dead. They would be very very dead. Um, and then the hologram shows tunnels in GVK. Yeah. So naturally, you would expect the hollow Earth itself to be inside the crust of the Earth, which is still. I initially thought that was a good enough defense or a good enough justification for the existence of the hollow Earth, but then we're introduced to this massive thing. Where is it? It's when Suko and Kong are walking into. Where is it?
Walking.
Where is it? I'm close. I'm close. I'm close. I'm very close. Uh huh. Uh huh. Hey. Where is it? Iwi. There. This massive freaking thing. Let me pull it up.
Are you showing it on screen on stream?
Yeah. This massive freaking thing could not exist if the hollow earth was inside the crust of the planet. Look how massive it is. Kong is already like, what, 200 something meters tall and Godzilla 300 meters. This is several miles of distance. Even if it was quadrupedal, it could not reasonably exist in the crust, inside the crust of the planet. So that's a problem. That's a huge problem. So it couldn't reasonably exist. So almost begrudgingly, but not really, I just came to the conclusion that the Hollow Earth is conceptually incoherent. I mean, that's kind of like the same conclusion most geologists came to anyway. Like, there's a reason why the Hollow Earth is treated as much of a conspiracy as like the flat Earth. Like, oh, the Earth is flat, or oh, the Earth is actually hollow. It's treated with the same vein because it completely ignores things like plate tectonics and volcanoes and stuff like that. It just cannot. It just cannot work. Now I thought, well, maybe if it existed as like giant cave tunnel systems and stuff like that, then maybe it would be like realistic enough to the point where it could kind of make sense. Of course, you'd have to get rid of the massive freaking sun in the Hollow Earth. Obviously, you'd have to get rid of that and just replace it with bioluminescence and volcanic activity to light up the place and make it look beautiful and haunting at the same time. But yeah, no, like, and then you said, and then, but I'm getting sidetracked. In GXK, the actual Hollow Earth entrance, the void is replaced with a bunch of rocks. It's replaced with a bunch of rocks. Now, you mentioned at one point in one of our streams that that was a correction, right? That was a correction. Why do you believe that was a correction? Like, what makes it better than
Uh,
just a void?
well, I think it makes a little more sense than a void because if you have just this big empty space, like how is anything held together? I think having actual tunnels that go through all of the sheer rock of the earth makes more sense.
Right, right. But then there's no mantle. So how would you account for that? Because we
Yeah.
need the mantle for like plate tectonics and volcanic activity. We need that. So why would that be better?
Uh, well, here's just the thing. This may be a subjective thing, but when it comes to, I guess, the technical real world implications, I don't see the issue in not having a mantle, specifically if it's just for this work of fiction, if that's how they explain the Earth works. Um,
Oh, so suspended in
I
disbelief, is that where you're going?
yeah, I guess so.
Well, my issue was that is the fact that the movie, at least starting the foundation of the MonsterVerse, started with what if this happened in the real world. So I would expect real world consequences and real world concepts to uh, bleed on over to the rest of the movies, because that's how initially it was marketed with both 2014 and Kong Skull Island. Like, what if these monsters were real? What if this happened in the real world? And then King of the Monsters kind of followed up on that, sort of. I mean, the movie was not good at all, but at doing this, but especially like the most egregious example I can think of is Sarazawa's quote unquote sacrifice. But and I've mentioned this before in the King of the Monsters debate, which you should watch. But I, the hell is this? But keeping that in mind, um, keeping that in mind, the MonsterVerse, because it began as something that took realism seriously, I would naturally expect that to bleed on over to the rest of the movies. Now you could say, "Oh, well, what about just tonal progression?" After the events of King of the Monsters, which resulted in the literal end of the world, how could you reasonably just tone it up and just allow something like this to happen? It doesn't follow logically. Like, you would naturally explore everything that happened in King of the Monsters, like after King of the Monsters. So you wouldn't then ignore all of that and say, well, actually, there's a Hollow Earth now, so let's pay attention to that, and then just up the tone. Like, after an end of the world story, you, or at least, after the world is essentially just reduced to rubble, you would then, therefore, continue on exploring that or expanding on that, right? Not necessarily making a montage of, something like Day of the Dead from Batman v Superman, but the consequences would affect the plot itself in the following movie, but they don't, and that's a problem. And the problem is compounded by the existence of GVK, because the problem is compounded by the existence of GXK, because GVK added more damage to the already pre-existing damage, right? And so another thing too, as an example of tonal progression, the plot does not justify the change in tone itself. If you want to change tone in a long-running storyline or a long-running franchise, it has to be justified by the plot itself. Take Berserk, for example. From the Golden Age to the end of Conviction, the narrative was dark. It was heavy. It was horrifying. It was just It was horrendously dark and hellish in all the best ways, of course, because Berserk is honestly one of the greatest pieces of fiction out there, like one of the last modern myths out there. And I mean that, like, okay, I say one of the best pieces of fiction, but honestly, it is mythic in scale. But nearing the Millennium Falcon arc, that's what fans call it. I don't. The War of the Falcon of the Millennium, I think that's the official name. I don't remember, but that fans call it Millennium Falcon for short, so I'm going to call it that. So the tone is relatively lighter. Like, once we get to Elfheim and once we get to the elves and Puck's domain, as you know, Guts starts letting more people in, like Farnese and God, I used to hate Farnese, just despise Farnese. And now I kind of don't hate her anymore. But anyway, you got Farnese, you got Shirke or Shrike. I like calling her Shrike, so I'm going to call her Shrike. Uh, the Serpico, and well, Casca's already there. And then there's Puck, and then there's Shrike's elf companion. I forgot her name. All of them, essentially functioning as Guts' family, let him experience a level of happiness and satisfaction that was alien and downright poisonous in an arc like the Black Swordsman. But it makes sense for the tone to progress from heavy and dark to somewhat lighthearted with elements that are still horror, because of the character arc that Guts had to go through. Everything he's learned, all the demons that he's killed, the conversations he's had with Skull Knight, like it makes sense. But for something like the MonsterVerse to go from dark to this, and then the Hollow Earth embodying that, it doesn't follow. It just does not track. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
let
I
me
can
look at
see where you're coming from with that.
mm,
For me, in my like personal perception, is like I always saw it as a natural progression from King of the Monsters to what we have now, because each film sort of continued to grow on that tone, um,
yeah,
as well as just the quote unquote world building, we'll say,
but
for the
established by what
MonsterVerse.
though? Established by what? Because the plot itself, like how can you go from the literal end of the world to Godzilla versus Kong, and then after that, Godzilla X Kong?
Going from the end of the world to GVK, well,
Yeah, billions died, billions with a B.
mm, let me think. Because we're going back to talking about GVK and
Yeah,
how it
I'm
affects
trying to avoid that,
everything.
but this is a
Yeah.
problem that is also present in GXK because it acts as if none of the events of GVK and King of the Monsters had any significant consequences whatsoever. Like the most we get is Gargantua insurance, which it's funny, but it also kind of makes sense if the events weren't as catastrophic as they were, which they absolutely were, even more catastrophic than what the movies paint them out to be. Like we see in the Godzilla vs Kong, for example, in Godzilla's attack at Apex, only 8 people died. Really, when a jet plane fell on a crowd of people, really, and when Godzilla was blowing his atomic breath everywhere, all the Apex employees that were blown to smithereens through, and all the soldiers on the ground that were blown to smithereens, and this is without including all the radiation that would have been present because of his atomic breath. Only 8 people died. That's just the movie straight up lying to you at that point. But that's just an example, right? They are minimizing the events that would naturally be catastrophic in scale and would deplete the money of entire nations. So I don't even know how one could even have insurance, but if the events were of a much smaller scale, then I could see that be, you know what I mean? But the existence is just
Mm-hmm.
but the existence of the insurance company itself just presupposes that the events weren't that bad, as opposed to just like they're treating it as natural disasters, which if you're being super uber symbolic, yeah, kinda, but those natural disasters level entire cities. And a lot of the times when monsters show up, they only show up in populated cities. They don't show up in the wild, they don't show up in uninhabited areas. The most we see that happening is in in Monarch, where Godzilla is going to literally goes to a desert to sleep. That's it. That's the only time we see that happening. And at that point, no other monster is threatening him or anything. He just wants to sleep there. And that just begs the question, okay, well, if he just wanted to sleep there, then what route did he take to go there? Did he actually just trample through cities just to get to the desert? And at that point, you start to question stuff. You start to ask questions, and you just come to the conclusion that, yeah, no, the world is screwed. They're just genuinely screwed. I have no idea how, like, the insurance company would go bankrupt immediately. Like they would fall apart immediately. I mean, it's a nice gesture. I think it's a nice gesture, but it's nowhere near enough compared to the damage that was done, uh, compounding damage that was done in the previous movies.
Mm.
Like you do
Yeah.
understand like the sheer magnitude of what it means for monsters going out of their way to attack populated cities, right? And even if God, you could say, oh
Yeah.
well, Godzilla's defending them. Yes, but the monsters that Godzilla needs to defeat get defeat. The monsters that Godzilla needs to defeat get there first. On top of the fact that Godzilla just decides to stay in the area when he doesn't need to, and then just leaves and doesn't even try to take the fight away from the populated areas. He just keeps them in there. At least Goku knew not to fight villains in cities. He would tell them, "Hey, I know a spot. Let's go there," and they'd be like, "I bet." And also, that just gives me an idea. Like, what if there was a villain that is actually trying to like fight in a city, and Goku's just actively trying to stop him from getting? That would be interesting. That would be an interesting fight. It would really like push him to the edge.
Would you agree with me that that problem with Godzilla is something that's consistent in the MonsterVerse with across all the movies?
Mm, hmm. I would say it's consistent that he keeps fighting in cities and chooses to fight that way, but that's mainly because he doesn't care that much about humans. But people say that he is protecting humanity, which is a blatant lie. He's just killing
Yeah.
them. So whatever positive that can be derived from the monster's killing is merely incidental and not intentional. And even then, the more monsters show up, they turn out to be more powerful than the last, which then in turn causes more collateral damage because the stakes need to be higher. You know what I mean? Because at least like
Mm-hmm.
with Scylla was just a jobber, right? He was just like a jobber type antagonist, and the same thing with Tiamat. Also, I forgot to mention, yeah, Tiamat was another example of Godzilla just not fighting in a populated area. That's another example. Uh, but yeah, he was just a jobber villain. But as the movies go on, like okay, the Muto and the Mutos, they were world threatening. They threatened the world, but they never got to the point where the entire world was at stake. Now, several important cities were flattened by the Mutos, and that is pretty bad. It's not going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to recover from that, but it's not impossible. And then King of the Monsters just jumps the shark with Ghidorah and ends up destroying the world. And then we go to Godzilla versus Kong, where Hong Kong is flattened. Which is just one more city added to the pantheon of cities that were just destroyed by the Titans. And then GXK continues to jump the shark with the introduction of four Titans fighting in one city at the same time, similar to King of the Monsters. Now you could say, "Oh well, their destruction is not planet wide." Sure, but whatever cities that are still surviving are also added on top of the already destroyed cities. Rome, the Egypt was it Egypt? Yeah, Egypt. Um, and Rio. So those three cities, assuming they were not already destroyed, were destroyed. And so that's like another city added. That was three. In Godzilla vs Kong, it was just the one. But now we jump to three again. So we went from three cities in Godzilla 2014 to the entire world to King of the Monsters to one city to King of Godzilla vs Kong, and then back to up to three cities in Godzilla X Kong. So there's an inconsistent yet noticeable escalation in terms of scale, in terms of like magnitude of destruction,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely unaddressed. But they still call Godzilla a hero for some goddamn reason.
Mm-hmm. Uh, yeah, I agree in the sense that I agree that like Godzilla's characterization like should have some work done to it to where it does address sort of his like what we've seen so far with his character.
Yeah. Like
Because,
honestly, like I don't even like mind that he does that. I just wish that the characters
yeah,
in the movie were honest about it. Like I don't honestly on its surface, I don't think it's a problem inherently that he does this. I just wish the characters just acknowledged it for what it was. I don't think you don't need to
yeah,
like really do much with Godzilla to improve. Like there are some like he's not very efficient with his patrolling of the earth. He's not very smart about it. Just look at Ghidorah. But and Scar King and Shimo. But Yeah, like he could have killed Scar King whenever he wanted to, but he chose not to for some goddamn reason, which is weird considering that he doesn't have a no kill rule. But and there's also the fact that he never attacked the military, and then in Godzilla X versus Kong and X Kong, he's actively going out of his way to kill the military for some goddamn reason, which is completely out of character. He would never do this. Um, and so,
Well,
but
one thing I did want to say, I think that similar point was brought up in Sea Monsters essay, um, to where like who shot first, the military, or Godzilla. I will stand on the fact that in those instances, the military always shot first, which is why Godzilla would attack them back.
yeah, but 2014 and King of the Monsters, they attacked him at some. Well, actually, no. King of the Monsters, he wasn't attacked at all. Um, in 2014, he was attacked, but he didn't fight back. He just tried to leave the area, and he wasn't weak either. He was just passing by. So he could have, but he didn't. He pushed through the bridge and just destroyed the bridge, but that was because he was being pushed through it, not because he was actively trying to destroy the bridge. He doesn't care about the bridge. He's just trying to get to the Mutos. And then there are these people just bothering him. But in Godzilla vs. Kong, he just goes out of his way to attack the city and attack the military as well. And he does the same thing in Godzilla X Kong. On top of the fact that, like, okay, if the military knows that the missiles only work to like drive him away, right? Surely they would bring more, right? Not just like a small squadron. Surely they would bring a lot of the militaries, like, because the military is just not like 5 dudes. They're not 10 dudes. They're not like a dozen. It's an entire army. You know what I mean? So they would naturally want to bring in more to have Godzilla be pushed out, right? Because he doesn't care about the humans, but also doesn't like being bothered by them, but not to the point where he would kill them, as established by 2014. And in 20 and this is consistent in 2019 as well in King of the Monsters. This is one of the few, and I say few, good things that King of the Monsters did was just continue on the fact that Godzilla does not care about the military enough to want to attack them. So him going out of his way to do it in Godzilla vs. Kong and X Kong is extremely out of character. So they shot first in 2014. He didn't do anything, but he attacked first in Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong, which is again out of character. But those are just two small issues. The
Well,
ones things that I've mentioned, those are just two small issues that are present in Godzilla's characterization. Just the inefficiency of his patrolling around the Earth, and just the character's
yeah.
hesitation of attacking the military. Those are two small issues that could be easily fixed. What needs to be overhauled is the world's perception. The world's perception of
Mm.
Godzilla is, at least specifically Monarch, because the world, from what we understand, still does not like the Titans. If we're being consistent from 2019 from King of the Monsters, they still do not like the Titans. They still do not like Godzilla. It's only Monarch that seems to be, in favor of him. So that's what needs to be addressed. Like, they need to recognize Godzilla for what he is.
Yeah, sure. I can agree to that. Uh, I can agree that that would make things overall better and would be a welcomed and beneficial change.
Yeah, C Animus
Um,
says
Objectively speaking.
C Animus says he's saving the world, not humanity. And does one go to war with flies? Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Unless like a billion flies show up, and at that point you just like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this. I'm running away. But he's saving the world, not so he's saving like the actual planet itself, not the main species that inhabits it, which is humans. So the idea of him being seen as a hero is just an incoherent thing to begin. He's saving the actual, the flora and the fauna. He doesn't the humans exist outside flora and fauna. So what Godzilla focuses on is flora and fauna. He does not care about humans. That is fine. I'm okay with that. Personally, I'm okay with that. But objectively speaking, that is fine. What's not fine
Hmm.
is Godzilla being worshipped for it, because it comes at the expense of humans. Unless you're a misanthrope, in which case, I don't know what to tell you.
The thing is, I think in the fandom, I think a lot of people, and this is just the fandom side of it, like the people who call, oh, Godzilla's a hero, they're seeing it through specifically, I always see it as like Serizawa's eyes because he had that whole characterization of like, oh, he's a god, we must have he is the key to balance, and we must coexist. Which, in some aspects, I agree with, and I think the Monsterverse should implement those ideas of having this coexistence with Godzilla, because I think there are ways you can address um, that, and there's effective ways to coexist with Godzilla so that there's less destruction whenever he has to do his thing.
So do
Um,
every example we've ever had of coexistence with Godzilla has resulted in disaster or isolation. Or at least not Godzilla, but just the Titans in general. Because the Eewees are a perfect example. Like, they don't coexist in the way we naturally expect it to. Every Eewee civilization we have seen has a wall isolating themselves from the Titans. The Titans that people say they coexisted with. They are isolated from them. Do you see the problem there? Right there? Like, they're not in union. They're like, you stay over there, and I'll stay over here. Cool, cool. Okay, well, what makes the Iwi different from the humans then? Because they're just trying, assuming that they don't want to expand anymore and they just want to stay in their own corner and survive and thrive there, away from Godzilla. Then surely they would be like they would raise up walls as well. Like just look at Attack on Titan for example.
yeah. Um, at this point in time, they've all had the like this own separate themselves away from the or wall themselves off from um,
You're roboting a bit.
established, and there's just been oh
Yeah,
sorry.
you might want to start over because most of what was said was cut out for a bit.
Well, I agree that having the iwi be walled off is like a sign that they acknowledge that the Titans are dangerous and that coexisting is going to be something that is a very like arduous um arduous task. But I think it is something that could be explored and done since we have seen that there are other civilizations of the past that are able to coexist with them. And in those instances, even as you stated, they have failed. From what we've gathered from the movies, in some ways, it can also be explained that it was not inherently because of um, the methods of the coexistence, but rather outside forces such as Ghidorah coming in or any rogue titans that decided to rise up against the status quo,
Yeah, but like
such as with Scar King.
a rogue titan is still a titan. You know what I mean? So honestly,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm being like super subjective here, I don't have a problem with exploring coexistence. I just want them to acknowledge it for what it is. The same thing with Godzilla. Like, let's not pretend it's going to be all good. Let's not pretend that this is going to be the highest good you could achieve. Let's not pretend that's the case. Um,
Hmm.
I want them to create a coherent way to achieve this. The only logical way I can see coexistence truly being achieved is if everybody just becomes a Luddite, kind of like the bug people from the Polygon trilogy. But knowing human nature, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So we could explore that conflict of those that want to live as a Luddite civilization, those that want to continue to expand the Imperium of Man. I'd like a Warhammer Godzilla crossover, or at least like this
Mm.
universe is the bedrock for Warhammer. That'd be good. That'd be awesome. But anyway, the Luddite civilization, the Empire of Man, led by Apex, if you want to, and Mechagodzilla. We could like have that be separate factions if you want to. Like one faction Mothra, the other faction Mechagodzilla, and then you got Misanthropes with I guess Ghidorah or Destroy if you really wanted to, and then you got Godzilla as his own like individual faction. That could be like separating the stuff into factions would really help, especially with the world building. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. But yeah, no, Godzilla X Kong. We're just spitballing ideas. It's slowly becoming a conversation and not a debate. And I have to
Mm.
leave it in like I don't know 30 minutes. So, or actually no 40. So I'm going to speed through other stuff as well. What
Sure.
other
Like
defenses do you have?
let's see. Let me see if I can pull up some stuff here. Mm. I'm just pulling up some notes to see if I have anything written down. Um, Let me see because well, can you well, I looked through some stuff. If you're leaving in soon, are there any like lightning round, um, like either plot holes or any other criticisms that I can probably like lightning round just shoot off some quick defenses for while I look around for stuff?
Hmm. So, so off the top of the, maybe not. This isn't really a plot hole, but this is just weird characterization, just really bad characterization. I mentioned this before in Zim stream, not Zim stream, but Zim's server. So, Gia in particular. Well, actually, hold on. No, I think I've already mentioned this. Let me just, because I did write it down. Let me double check. Mm. Oh, today's Gareth Edwards' birthday. Oh, happy birthday to the goat. Um, Yeah, okay. So, the implication, I'm going to read just verbatim what I said. So, the implication is that Gia and Kong's stories are about not fitting in with anyone or being the last of their kind. That's all neat, but the difference is that Kong literally has no one else and zero social interactions with any other species, whereas Gia, on the other hand, even though her race is nowhere to be found on the face of the planet, according to the movie itself, she has friends, and it is said by the teacher that she doesn't interact with her friends, which means that at some point she went out of her way to make friends and succeeded, and yet she's isolating herself from them. Not once are we shown why she would want to isolate herself from her friends and purposefully make herself more lonely than she already would feel. And while Kong is not doing this on purpose, for all intents and purposes, Gia is. This isn't to say it wouldn't happen in real life, but the parallelism between the two stories is completely shattered because of this. And a lot of the problems the teachers have presented with her are completely arbitrary. And honestly, I don't know why the teacher would refer to some of her classmates as friends if Gia said she didn't belong anywhere. If she did have friends, then she probably would fit right in, especially when you take into account the fact that there are others like her as well as there are others like her as well who are culturally displaced, as stated by the teacher herself, which is why I don't buy into the I don't think the I don't buy at all into the whole parallelism between Kong and Gia. It just does not cohere at all. It doesn't cohere with it. It doesn't adhere to itself. You know what I mean? It's only vagaries that people make assigned to it where they draw the connection. Alex Gomez in chat says, "Sorry, I'm late. What I missed? Oh no, just the entire podcast. No big deal."
All right, so to that, I'll say I think it's only inherently different because Kong is a monster and Gia is a human. So her sense of isolation and loneliness is gonna stem more from human aspects. So she is cut off from her people because she's the last of her tribe,
Yes,
and
we know
in
this.
ways it
Yeah, we know
yeah.
this. I'm just saying that the thing that triggers the loneliness does not the thing that perpetuates the loneliness isn't the fact that she's the last of her tribe. It's that she's isolating herself, as opposed to the isolation being there already. With Kong, it makes sense. With Gia, it could be tied down to something more emotional, which we could have delved deep into. It's not necessarily that the movie it did something wrong by establishing this, but rather it did something wrong in not expanding on this. We're just thrown into that problem without exploring why the solutions, such as hang out with your friends more, doesn't work. And the audience is just left up in the air to just assume, oh well, maybe she just doesn't actually like her friends. Which again, writing for the writer, you can't do that.
Or so with that case, I don't think it's a case of rank for the writers because as the teacher explained, and both Eileen's explanation is that because she is cut off from her people, it's reasonable to see that her isolation is due to her not, likely not being able to relate to the world around her, as she's trying to adapt to, the new school life and everything. Now she's like away from Kong more since he's in Hollow Earth, so she doesn't have that last like line of connection to her people and her past and her home.
Yeah, but she still
So
has way to monitor him. And she Animus in chat says Gia had friends and worked well at school until the Iwi started messing with her. Wait, real? Huh? I didn't think about it that way. Huh? Maybe I shouldn't, be taking information from chat. I should be taking information from my own thoughts. But damn, I can't get that thought out of my head now. I can't stop it. Damn.
the way it's presented, it is presented as those problems were there beforehand, because like the vision we see is the first instance of the visions happening. But before that, she was already having these problems in school, as the teacher said. And Eileen correlates it to her being the last member of a tribe
Wait, wait,
and
wait, wait,
having to
wait, wait,
deal
wait.
with
Hold
the
on.
repercussions of that.
Wait, hold on. So you just said that these problems are implied to have happened before, but the her receiving the visions happened for the first time at that point in time. That doesn't track.
Why not?
Because if she had those problems before, then it wouldn't. Then the visions she's having wouldn't have been the first time. Unless
Mm.
that's not what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that the teacher has been explains to Eileen that her isolating herself from her friends, the grade slipping and stuff, that's already been happening. And based on what we see on screen, the vision that Gia sees
Oh wait, so you're saying
is
they're
the
saying they're
first.
separate issues? Is that what you're saying? They're separate issues. The
Yeah, they're
isolation is
separate.
one
They're
thing.
separate issues.
Oh, okay. So okay, I think that makes more sense now. Um, okay, so why? So we know that she feels isolated because of the displacement of her culture, and the teacher says that there are other students that are what is wrong with me? There are other students that are also culturally displaced. Um, so what's stopping her from, assuming those happen to be her friends? What is stopping her from seeking comfort in the fact that there are people like her, even though they're not of the same race and their race still exists in the world, as opposed to Gia's, who doesn't know that she's not the last of her. What is stopping her from seeking that kind of comfort?
Um, I'll say it's likely due. Um, well, as I mentioned before, it's like relating to them in a certain way because she's more of a unique case where the character is the last of her kind, quote unquote, or the last of her tribe, and that is a more unique form of displacement, as opposed to what some of the other kids might be going through.
Well, sure, but that doesn't mean they
Because
can't relate. Like we don't, for example, whenever we see relatable characters, we don't look at, I don't know, Thanos and say that he's relatable in the sense that, oh, people call him a madman because he has an idea that he wants to implement into a society for the betterment of the entire society, but nobody believes him, and then the society goes to waste. Like that concept is relatively relatable, that nobody listens to you, your good ideas, and it ends up backfiring on everybody else, and you're just sitting there being like, yeah, I told you so. I don't want this to happen again though, so I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that kind of thing from happening again. That's relatable, but that kind of solution that Thanos would employ would never be applicable in real life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-to-one correlation in terms of life experiences and stuff like that. It doesn't need to be a one-to-one correlation for it to be relatable, which is why my question would then be again, what is stopping her from seeking the kind of comfort that she would need in people that are also culturally displaced, if she has friends?
I would say yeah, I would say at that point it's just her own feelings and how she might see how she might see the situation that she's in.
Right, but why would she have those feelings? What triggers beyond just the fact that she's displaced? What triggers the feelings that oh nobody would understand me because that wasn't established at all.
The only establishment is that she just has this sense of not belonging in that place,
Yes,
um,
I agree. Which
due to
is
just her circumstances.
yes, which is emergent from the ether and not any form of establishment, which is a problem. It just comes out of it. Just we're just told that we don't see that, and that's one of the most basic rules of writing. Just show, don't tell. Which, ironically enough, is showing and not telling is visual storytelling, which the movie supposedly prides itself on. So that could have been an opportunity. Visual storytelling is not exclusive to monsters. That's all I will say. But yeah, they could have shown it, but it's not shown at all. So that feeling comes out of left field. It just emerges from the audience's perspective. It emerges. Not to say that there aren't any reasons. There could be a plethora of reasons why it would exist. But within the context of the situation, from what we would understand as an audience, it would just be like the feeling just emerges out of nowhere.
I would say sure. The only small itty bitty thing I will say is something we can point to the visual storytelling, and this is a small thing. I won't die on the hill for it. Is that when we first see her, she's like just walking home alone from school. She has this more so, like blank neutral expression as she's going to her class, and like she's alone as opposed to all the other kids who are in their own friend groups. So we get a sense that she's like she's isolated there.
Yeah, but she has. But
um
they tell us she has friends. So,
yeah, but she's been isolating herself from them, as the teacher explains.
and then the
um
question then becomes, why was she isolating themselves from them? Which is a question that is never explored.
yeah, it is somewhat not explored.
Which then weakens her
Since
character because at that point you're supposed to just assume stuff from the plot instead of just actually seeing stuff unfold. You are relying on hearsay essentially from other characters. Oh, this happens off screen. This happened off screen. And they don't even like go into detail. They just say vagaries like, "Oh, her grades are slipping. She's smart, but she has a lot of trouble. She's the last of her kind, and she's lonely, and it's very vague, very it's delivered in such a way that you get the general idea without bearing the responsibility of exploring the idea, which if you presented the idea, you would also be responsible for exploring it because you were the one that wanted the idea there to begin with as a writer. You would need to do that.
fair, and I would agree in some sense. I think that due to the visions being portrayed as that instance being the first time it's happening, of all that focus of the visual storytelling and how it's affecting her is more so focused on her experiencing the visions rather than that sense of belonging. We only get the one um, instance after she leaves school and has that talk with Eileen, where we get that her saying that she doesn't feel like she belongs. And but one thing I do see in the film that I think is good is that in terms of the visual storytelling is that as she goes on the journey, we see that she becomes more expressive and becomes like more happier as she starts to discover the remnants of the Iwi village as we go along. And we see her at her most happiest when she's with her people, playing games and such. Um, that then causes Eileen to think that she might have to leave her here if she wants her to stay happy, versus where we see her mostly, lonely and sad and expressing that she feels like she doesn't belong on the surface.
Yeah, we can see the feelings being portrayed. It's just that a lot of the feelings aren't justified by some internal establishment of why she would even develop those feelings to begin with. As a for and what you mentioned of her meeting her people again, she feels happy. Well, what are her people offering her specifically that the other people in the surface world are not? That's what I would want to know. Because let's say there are some people that are that belong to a race, and by hanging around with said race, they do not like it. They just begin to resent their own race. So that will always be a possibility. So I have to ask, what is the Iwi tribe offering her that she couldn't get in the surface world?
Um, I would say it's that sense of being with, your people that she was robbed of from like a young age, and she only had the Eileen's work on studying the Iwi. She had Kong. Um, she only has that sense of like whatever memory she had. What was that?
Sorry, I was just
Oh, sorry.
I was just it
All
was
right,
me.
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So, like I was saying, like I guess in a ways it is that sense of belonging. Like these are your people who, for a majority of your life so far, you've been disconnected from in a large way. So they're probably some of the only people you can relate to culturally in that sense because I can only like somewhat imagine being the last of your people, you know, and just the amount of weight that has on you to
Uh,
where like unless you start up your own culture from there, you're essentially the last person to know any of that stuff, like firsthand being part of the culture.
yeah. Uh, Animus says in chat, they're not her people. This is a culture separated by thousands of years. That's like saying the Irish are more at home in Iran because their ancestors migrated from there a couple thousand years ago.
Well, I'd say it would only be the case if there's like a small remnant population of the Irish, and that like if there's like a mountain village of Irish people and you're the last Irish person and everywhere else in the world
Yeah, but I wouldn't even
and
say
the
that.
culture's
Like,
still so strong.
I wouldn't even say that. Like, I would just completely just assume. Okay, well, let's just say for the benefit of the doubt that they are her people. Whatever. Let's just. I will suspend my disbelief in that. Okay, let's say for example that they are that is her people, right? Even if that were the case, the sense of belonging is peh, peh. The sense of belonging is predicated on a foundational social need, right? So where would that emerge when she just met these people, right? Because the most we see her do is just run around and playing with the kids. So we are like, which is supposed to mean, oh, she finally found her home. She feels the sense of belonging. Why does she feel like she belongs beyond just the fact that they are the same race? Because again, for all we know, maybe she learns because this is let's look at this allegory. Let's look at this allegory. Uh, I use this allegory a lot with my friends. So imagine a Roman guy. He goes to Africa for the first time, and he sees Africans for the first time. And there's this one African that sees a Roman for the first time, and the Roman offers the African to give him a tour of Rome, and he agrees. The African then enters into Rome and sees all the technological advancements and all the beautiful architecture, the education. Now, keep in mind, this African comes from a very like bad area in Africa. Like Africa has some really good, some really interesting architecture, really interesting art, and just I'm not very familiar with African history, but I just know that there are a lot of things in Africa that are just not mentioned in history at all. They're just like lost to time, and people just don't really recognize it for what they are. It's just things of beauty. But for the sake of argument, this specific area where this African guy came from, let's just say it was just mud huts and stuff like that. For the sake of the argument, which is not
Mhm.
representative of the collective. But yeah, this African meets with the Roman, sees all of Rome, and then he is filled with wonder and just how could some civilization just achieve this level of technology? And then he goes to the Byzantine Empire and he sees the exact same thing but better. Although I am biased in favor of the Byzantine Empire, but that's a separate argument. And so after the tour is over, the 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 African goes back home and says his goodbyes to the Roman and gives him gifts, and they exchange gifts, and yeah, he goes back to his native land. And this specific area of the native land is not as advanced as Rome is. And after seeing that, he becomes dejected, he becomes bitter towards his own people because they're not like what he saw. That phenomenon has happened time and time again. That phenomenon has happened a couple of times to several people. And it's just a general thing where people just begin to hate their own race and people begin to hate their own blood because they're not like something that they would consider to be better. So my question is, because what Gia is experiencing is the opposite of that, where she at a young age arrived at a highly technologically advanced world with technology that just from her perspective would border on magic, and she has been enjoying the fruits of the labors of other people, with the creation of technology and agriculture, advancements in agriculture, all of that. And then she returns to her people who are less technologically advanced than she is. That they don't have air conditioning, they don't have television, they don't have entertainment of that kind. They're not as advanced as modern day, humanity. So where is that sense of belonging coming from? Not to say that she would necessarily grow to resent her culture. I'm not saying that she will do that. I don't think she's the type of person that would. And honestly, I would find it very out of character, unless properly developed. But what is keeping her from growing resentful and realizing, I don't like living here, actually. I want to go back with you, Mom, Eileen.
I don't know if I can honestly really answer that because, from my perspective, what you described in that situation, that would inherently just be like an individual thing with whoever saw that new advanced technology or
Yeah,
that new advanced
yeah. So
culture.
like a character thing, right? Because Gia is also an individual.
Yeah.
We could explore that aspect of her character. Why does she prefer her culture? Why would she? What are the arguments that would convince her to stay?
Mm. I'm not too honestly sure because from what we see in the film, we get that sense that hmm, let's see, how do I word
We
this?
get the sense that she feels like she belongs in that place, which is predicated by what?
I can't think of any like predication that we see
Yeah,
other than
that's a problem. That's a problem. At least a character writing flaw, because that we are just left to just say accept that she just has the feelings without anything to trigger them. It's like a bullet without a gun.
hmm, I guess so. Because like the only other thing I would think is that special connection of the telepathic connection that the moment that her people died,
Hmm.
she got cut off from.
At
Because when
that
she
point,
comes to the village,
yeah, and so at
the
that
first
point, it
thing
would
she
just be
sees
like
is
an obligation to be there as well, as opposed to like an actual desire. Like it just, and that could be like an interesting story as well. Like she realizes she doesn't want to be with the Iwi, but she realizes that she's too important and she doesn't actually want to let them die. So she begrudgingly becomes their leader, but she doesn't really want to be. That could be interesting writing, but we're not gonna get that.
sure, sure, that could be the case. And I can see where that can become a problem.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I'm gonna start here. This is just a personal thing, quick personal thing, to where, and I guess with a lot of the stuff you've said, this is all subjective. Where I could acknowledge where these flaws come into, both logically and objectively. Um, but due to my subjective feelings of the film, I can overlook that, and I think that from my standpoint of the argument, that's what gives GXK some merit, and that if it can reach people that way, um, then by that fact, it has merit to exist,
But
and it
that
isn't just
but that wouldn't come from the film itself. That would come from you assigning meaning to it.
yeah. And like I wouldn't think that's a bad thing or a negative of the film.
That's not a negative of the film, but it's not a positive either. Because at that point you're just assigning the quality, which is fine. You can like the movie, but the
Yeah,
movie does not produce it in itself. You are producing it for it. And because I have like 10 minutes left, I'm gonna because
yeah,
we haven't like covered like we haven't covered a huge chunk of the movie. Like we
mm,
just covered like several disparate areas of it.
yeah.
So I'm going to skip to the monsters.
Okay,
Godzilla doesn't even need to be there. I think it's already been. I think every argument that has been made in favor of the idea that Godzilla doesn't even need to be there has been made. But what about Godzilla? What about Kong and Suko? Well, you already know what I feel about Kong and Suko, right? Kong is fine. Like it. Sorry. So the Kong just being there, like it's a flaw of GVK where like things just happen to him and now he's just here. Um, Nothing to do with what Kong wants. It's just people telling us what Kong wants instead of us understanding that Kong would actually want it. Because like, what if Kong wants to be with his people but doesn't actually want to go to the Hollow Earth? We never know that. We don't know that. We're just told that we are just shown by GVK that he's coerced by Eileen to actually get to the Hollow Earth, as opposed to just him making a conscious decision without any form of external convincing. But now he's just here, and now we're just working on that broken foundation. From that point on, Kong wants to meet his people. He's sad that he doesn't. You already know my feelings on that stupid frog in the in
mm.
the stream with Animus. Not Animus. What's his name? God, sea
Sea monster.
monster. How could I forget? How could I forget? Um, and then he meets his the Scar King, but he's evil, and so he has to kill him, and he does, and then he takes over his kingdom. Very straightforward. It's not good, but it's not bad either. It's just kind of is. It's just kind of there. It's kind of neutral, which like okay, sure, fine, whatever. And then Suko, we're the Suko sympathetic. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. Suko's change makes no sense because we're told that he is loyal to Scar King, but begrudgingly because Scar King abuses him. Okay, fine, sure, whatever. The problem is then, well, actually, I'll ask you, where do you think the change in Kong, where do you think the change in Suko's view of Kong began?
It began when I would say when Suko realizes that Kong isn't gonna hurt him for no reason after he takes down the drowned viper.
Right, so when he gives him the food, right?
No, I would say it's the moment where he looks up at him as a response to Kong not, you know, hurting him for trapping Kong
You wouldn't
or setting up
say
Kong.
you wouldn't say it's the food when he gives him the piece of the food.
I think that furthers the moment, but it starts when at that moment when Suko realizes that Kong might not be like Scar King and hurt him for like, doing a thing.
Right. So we know that people generally believe that at this in this specific era part of the plot we know that Kong is not going to hurt Suko. The issue is he did hurt him. First time they met, actually. Now, Suko was in
Suko
the
bit
wrong.
first.
Suko was in the wrong for it, but that doesn't matter. Like if you attack someone and they fight back, you're going to be scared, and they win by a landslide. Then you would be scared of them too. like Zuko's fear of Kong makes complete sense. It makes complete sense that Zuko would fear him, that fear that he would hurt him again because he did hurt him. Very brutally too. He used him as a baseball club, and very humiliatingly too. He used him as a belly club. So that scene completely destroys and undoes any. But before it even takes off, it just completely destroys the character arc as well. Because from Zuko's perspective, Kong is keeping him as a prisoner. If Kong doesn't kill Zuko, it's because he still wants Zuko to lead him to the Scar King because he can't get there on his own. If he kills Zuko, then he will have no way to get to the domain of the Scar King. So why would he hurt him? But that doesn't mean that he would be necessarily be kinder to him. It just means that he's keeping him as a prisoner, which would be what Zuko believes. We know that's not the case. We know Kong is actually kind-hearted, but Zuko doesn't know that. And so when he gives him the food, which is where a lot of people point to as the place where Zuko learns to trust Kong, he's just feeding a prisoner at that point. He's feeding a prisoner, not the he's feeding his prisoner, not protecting him or just being nice, which would be what Zuko would naturally assume would be the case given his experiences with slavery. So it would make complete sense for him to not trust him at all. But then he starts to help Kong after the death of Zuko's surrogate, which, by the way, that geography needed to change for that guy to die. So the CGI artists are assholes for doing that. they just opened up a lava pit for the Zuko's surrogate to fall and to die, and then it just closes back again. I thought that was hilariously cruel.
Mm. Yeah, but I would disagree that it ruins the character arc because it's not this sudden instance of Zuko just trusts Kong blindly after that fact. They still have there's still moments where Zuko sees that Kong is different from Scar King and all the other apes. It starts with him not hurting Zuko after the fight with the Drowned Viper. It continues when Kong gives offers Zuko the meal, and then it continues when they find the people that
Right.
Kong
But
defends and stands up for other apes.
but from Zuko's perspective, why would those be good things instead of just him treating him like a prisoner?
Because for all of Zuko's from that point Zuko it's easy to see that all his life he's only seen the ruthlessness of Scar King, the red stripes, and just how all the apes are treated. He's only known that cruelty.
Mm.
And so when he sees Kong come into his life, and even if like, oh, he, in the fight that Zuko started, um, he's not gonna be hurt for no reason. He's gonna be shown compassion when Kong shares his food. Kong stands up for the other apes, and then when his one of his only friends is killed by Scar King in a ruthless way, Kong, immediately goes into action and starts fighting for them.
Yeah, but I believe you're ignoring one thing that I said, and it's the fact that the first encounter resulted in Zuko being bludgeoned and using others to bludgeon. Um,
Yeah, but
and then
that's like
another thing that I think you're also ignoring is the fact that from Zuko that Scar King Scar King is also not shown to actually physically hit him in the presence because Scar King wouldn't care that anybody, even Kong himself, is watching. He would abuse him if he wanted to. So it's not. But we don't actually see Zuko physically hurting. Uh, we don't see Scar King physically hurting Zuko, but we do see Kong physically hurting Zuko brutally. So from Zuko's perspective, how would him not hurting him after the Viper incident, how would that differentiate him from Scar King in his mind?
I guess it's all the more likely that Zuko's never seen Scar King or any of the other apes show that much compassion in like day to day life. Like
But
he's
that's
probably
the thing.
only
How would
known
he
that
interpret that as compassion? How would he interpret that as compassion?
Because it's not behavior you see in the other apes.
Like
Um,
not hitting him,
mostly,
not like not hitting him. That's because
yeah.
then by that logic, Scar King is compassionate to Zuko because he doesn't hit him.
We don't see that on screen, but there's obvious implications that it has happened.
By what?
We see it by how the other apes interact with each other, by the scar on Zuko's face, that and how he recoils in fear whenever Scar King gets close, and how he's just afraid of him. It's all implied, which is
Yes, you can be
part
afraid
of
of
the
you can be
storytelling.
afraid of someone threatening to hit you instead of actually hitting you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hit you. And which scar are you talking about? Because I'm looking at Zuko right now. I don't see anything. Oh wait, no, I see it.
He has a scar right over his eye.
Oh, wait, no, yeah, no, I see it. I see it.
Another win for me.
N- no, because that could be anything. Like,
Nah,
is it
he's the Scar
it is
King, bro.
is it established that Scar King gave him that scar?
It's in his name, bro. The Scar Giver. Oh wait, that's the wrong movie. Scar King.
Yeah, no, wrong movie. You want to talk?
That was a semi joke, but um,
Uh, Cianima says Scar King was going to until the friend got in the way. Then Scar King kills the friend. Yeah, but he's an adult. Scar King, Suko's a kid. Now, one thing I
yeah.
will say: chimpanzee behavior. They will eat other chimps, especially if they're smaller and they're babies. I will say that. But Scar King could have for millennia, and he didn't. So clearly, Suko has some sort of use for him. So the
Mm.
conclusion would
But
then be Suko has no reason to assume Kong will not hurt him if their first interaction, number one, involved him being bludgeoned, and number two, he was being held like a prisoner from his perspective. Like I don't, there wouldn't be any way to interpret your captor feeding you as kindness. Cianima says Diddy is the only child of usable age there. What happened to the rest? They are in Scar King's lair with his harem. That's where they are.
most of them,
Yeah, like
or at least
it's kind of
his
sounds like a joke,
directed.
but it's true. It's there. They're in the harem. Now you could say, well, they're all younger than Suko. Okay, sure. You could, but you could also that could just mean old Suko's just the oldest one of the bunch then. At which point he's like the
Yeah,
first child soldier that Scar King is deploying
yeah,
like continuously. Usable age as in not babies. Yeah, which again that could just mean that Suko is just the oldest one of the people of the harem, and he's like because he's the oldest one, he's more capable, and therefore he sends him as a child
yeah. But
soldier.
there's also other young apes in the scene too.
Younger than Suko?
Probably.
I can't work on it. Probably it has to be a definitive.
Mm. Well, they're all either like running next to their mothers or on top of their mothers.
Yeah, well, they're not of usable age then, especially if they're not as big as Tsuko is compared to them.
Yeah.
Cianima says, or they were killed by an impatient king. Uh, the existence of the harem, which is looks to be pretty sizable, doesn't actually support that all that much.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground here. I think I would want to continue. Unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah. Same here. I would
So
love to continue more
yeah,
other time.
I think overall, like your arguments overall, a lot of them, yeah, it is pretty much as I said, post hoc, uh, and there were some appeals to emotion here and there, which is I don't think that's good for argumentation at all. But no, I do appreciate you being a good sport over it. I do appreciate being a
Mm-hmm.
good sport. Um, I'm honestly kind of surprised we didn't get heated, but I it doesn't bother me. As a matter of fact, I find this to be a lot more enjoyable than just getting heated. But
Yeah.
and Sienna says you are currently working on suggestions. the 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 thing with the child soldier, if he's the oldest one, and if Suko's the oldest one, and the others are not being deployed the same way, then I don't see how that could be a suggestion, honestly. Um, but although I would definitely offer suggestions to the movie, 100%, I would offer suggestions to the movie because it needs it desperately. Um, but yeah. Anyway, so I appreciate being a good sport. I appreciate you coming on, and I keep confusing the buttons. I appreciate this little debate, this final little
Mm-hmm.
hurrah. Uh, I maybe like when season 3 of Blackscreen begins, I will ask Sea Monster, just interrogate Sea Monster on his Godzilla X Kong video, because I think I have many things to say about it. Some good, a lot not good things to say about it. I think, but the main gist of the argument is that I don't think he was harsh enough. I don't think he was harsh enough to the movie. Not harshness, not necessarily unfair, but still not harsh, not as harsh as he should have been. And there are a lot of points that he missed. But anyway, appreciate you coming here, and thank you
Mm-hmm.
all for those that stuck around. This is the last. This is the last black screen for now. I just wanted to end it off with a bang, end it off with a banger. Talking about this stupid movie that keeps haunting my nightmares, and yeah, I request reparations, and so you can find me where I told you you'd find me, Mr. Blackaroony on Twitter. Join the Discord server if you want to, or you don't have to. No pressure. Uh, Buy me a coffee, give me money. Patreon, I will post more often there. Uh, and, sorry, Rumble. I sometimes post music, but I will post more if you sub there. Um, and yeah, and Vic, you can shill if you want.
Well, I appreciate you letting me on for the last season finale of the Black Screen. It was a lot of fun. I, I genuinely did try my best, and I think it's fair of any of your um, points towards any of my arguments. I think they're all fair. I do want to generally try and get better to work on my defenses and argue them as best I can in the right ways. Um, Thank you again for having me on. You can find me on YouTube as Kaijunot, where I will uh, keep posting videos, do some streams and stuff about my art and different takes on films and such. You can find me again on Twitter as Vix Monstrosities. I do have comms open as well on my Ko-fi page. Um, so if you're interested in anything there of my artwork, I can do kaiju OCs, fan art, and the like. You can all find it there. I have lots of different options for you. And just thank you again for having me on.
All right, and I thank you all again for being here. This has been Blackaroony, last episode of Black Screen. I will keep this public for a week, and then it's going back to the unlisted. But you can find this stream in the Black Screen podcast playlist, and I will see you all in a couple